Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Nasri Adam. I'm the Regional Director for AVPA for East Africa, and really pleased to see you. Thank you for those who came early and were patient with us as we set up. There was an event before us, but I think we've managed to get ahead of the time. So thank you again for coming. There are teas and coffees and waters as you come in. Feel free to use those throughout the course of the afternoon. There are washrooms, and that's just behind, and I'm just motioning to the door. In another life, I wanted to have that job where I was just kind of doing this all the time. And then we also have some spaces downstairs in case you need to take a call for whatever reason and need to excuse yourself. Feel free to do so. Today's program is really about, first, introducing AVPA to some of you who may be new to what AVPA does, and also to reconnect with some of our partners and some of the people who've really been with us. We have an amazing set of people in the room. Some are ecosystem builders like us. I'm sure some are on the way, but just to make mention of Ande and Ashoka, who are also with us today, and also to make mention of the USADF. Timothy is here with us today, so thank you very much for honoring our invite. We have a great panel coming up, and we have some pitches as well. Someone just said to me when they're coming in, they're like, oh, I hate pitches. But you know what? It's going to be great. It's going to be good. We're going to keep the energy going. And thank you very, very much for being with us today. All right? So we have a program up on the screen, and that captures what it is that we're going to be doing this afternoon. We hope to have a hard stop for 5:30, so please stay with us, talk to us. Let's talk to each other, and I look forward to a really fruitful session with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about AVPA, and I'm going to move a little bit, and it might stress out the camera crew because I can't see the screens. So just giving them notice. Just going to come down. So AVPA is an ecosystem builder. We're a network of social investors dedicated to increasing the flow of capital for impact across Africa. We bring together investors from across the continuum of capital. So in this room today, you're going to have corporates, you're going to have lawyers, you're going to have VCs, DFIs, innovators. And our role as AVPA is we sit firmly in the middle. We want to be a facilitator, and we want to be able to collaborate and encourage you to collaborate with each other, just like today. Through platforms like the Africa Advantage is how we are here today. And I'd like to also just make mention to the fact that we do have a Pan-African presence as AVPA. We have a team in Joburg, and we actually have representation. Tafadzwa is here, he's our CFO, and he flew in just to be here with you today. And we have our CEO, Dr. Franca Swani as well, who sits in Joburg, and our regional director, Ms. Matebe, who is also just new with us as well. We also have the Lagos hub there in West Africa. So we have our membership lead, Ms. Chinedu, and we also have Tochukwu, our regional director, based out of there. In Nairobi, we have the bulk of our team. Somebody asked me earlier, are you guys in Nairobi? Yes, we're in Nairobi, and we're open, and we're happy to have you with us today. We are part of a global network. So AVPA is the Africa body, but we have Latin Impacto, Impact Europe, that was formerly EVPA, and AVPN. And these are really strong movements, and we want to be able to also offer the best of Africa through what we're doing, not just here today, but continuing forward. So we know what the numbers are as relates to healthcare on the continent. And the reality is that we thought with certain things happening like COVID, people will take healthcare a lot more seriously. We thought there'd be a lot more investments. We had great aspirations for where African healthcare is going to go. And with even some of the misgivings in terms of the direction some of the conversations have gone, we still see a huge opportunity. And hence, the Africa advantage is why we think that it's an advantage to be here in Africa, and it's an advantage to do business in Africa. So today we want to explore the challenges and opportunities that we have, showcase some of the brilliant work that's happening. I mean, even just setting up the pitches, I was inspired. I almost felt like I have a career in healthcare as well. So that was really inspiring. So to be able to showcase what everybody's doing in this room would be really amazing for us. And as I said in my opening remarks, fostering collaboration across the African healthcare ecosystem is critical to the work for AVPA. So I'd like to now invite my colleague, Mr. Abu Okari, he's just hovering somewhere there, to join me here and speak more around the Africa advantage. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nasri. Good afternoon. My name is Abu Okari. I handle communications for AVPA. And if you have attended a couple of online sessions, you've probably seen my face. Other than that, I conceptualized and co-led the development of the concept, the Africa Advantage, with my colleague, Zach Mikwa, who can't join us today because of other circumstances. Additionally, I manage the Africa Impact Investing Fellowship, which is growing into the leading impact investing program in Africa. So if you are looking to grow your impact knowledge, you can check it out on our website. During one of the sessions, a speaker, a veteran of investing from the Western world, shared a very interesting anecdote. He said in one of the investment programs, they were investing in African rural women, and they discovered that the women paid back their loans to the rate of 98%. And the 2% were due to circumstances beyond their control, you know, floods, fires, loss of their crop, or capital goods. I found that particular statement very intriguing because when you look around, credit to rural African women is, so when you factor in risk, the risk factor is very high, but the evidence from the ground shows that it's actually the opposite. You shouldn't be factoring risk that much when lending to African women. And that is the basis of actually what we're trying to achieve with the Africa Advantage and the basis of the event today. So it points to three factors. One, narrative or perception, and the fact that narrative or perception has a cost to it and can be very expensive. Also, the other fact is that challenges can be opportunities. This is true all over the world, but more so in Africa. And the question of who is an expert and where do we source our knowledge? Who do we quote? What points of data do you use when you are factoring something in an investment decision? We are at a precipice of an emerging world order, and Africa has a very good chance to leverage this to actually shift the narrative and change the trend or the trajectory of the continent's development. With that, we formed the Africa Advantage, an initiative to celebrate Africa as a global destination for impact. It's spearheaded by a magazine. I'm sure some of you have read it. And we source the expert articles or opinions from African voices. It is intentional, and we intend to keep it that way. And if you want to contribute, feel free to reach out to us. If you can go to the next slide. So these are our inaugural contributors. We featured 6 articles. Diana and Dr. Gethinji, who heads AMREF, wrote about the opportunity in healthcare. I'm not going to speak to data, My colleague Nazri pointed a bit to that at the very beginning. But Diana makes a very compelling case for the investment opportunity in Africa based on trends, recent developments in health funds, and the need or the demand for health services on the continent. Dr. Githinji speaks to what happens when you merge Africa's growing youth demographic with the global deficit in healthcare personnel. The other aspects of our initiative, the Africa Advantage, are regional convenings. I'm not going to speak to that a lot today because this is a testament of what a regional convening is, and I'll leave it up to you to decide what you feel about it and let us know at the end of the day. And then finally, it's a global investor engagement platform. We want to promote genuine collaboration. We did a couple of surveys last year in Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, and Mozambique. And one overarching response we got from investors was the need for genuine collaboration. And we kept wondering why was the emphasis on genuine collaboration? And we found out, and that's the basis of some of our programs. And additionally, the end goal for these convenings is to eventually shift some of them to be community-led, and that tied to our communities of practice, surface or develop new knowledge that can inform better investments in Africa. How many of you are Nigerians? No one? South Africans? Tafazwa. It's okay. So our CEO has two phrases he likes to use to describe Africa. He calls it the impacts, the sandbox of impacts. And then the other one, which is more apt for the occasion, is the Macarena of impacts. So if you're a football fan, and if you're Nigerian, I'm sure you relate more. But if you're South African, I'm sure you don't want to hear anyone mention football today. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you very much, Abu, for that presentation. And for those who have not downloaded the Africa Advantage, it was sent to you as part of the link. So please, please download it, please read it, please share it, and also think about contributing to the next one. We would really be happy to collaborate on some of the work that you're already doing and really showcase that in the next issue. So at this point, I'd like to invite our panel for our panel discussion. And we're going to have 4 panelists. And I've been given the impossible task, I think, of moderating some brilliant, brilliant minds this afternoon who have such a wealth of knowledge around the healthcare space. So I would really like to invite Audrey Obara, Regional Director, East Africa, Swede Fund International, to join us on this stage. Thank you very much. Wamboi Nyabero, Chief Technology Officer, Vilgro Africa. Dr. Pratap Kumar, the CEO and founder of Health eNet. And finally, Peter Ndichu, Venture Building Lead, Catalyst Fund. Please give them a round of applause as they join the stage. Everybody feeling good? All right. So I said I had an impossible task. And the reason that I felt it was impossible is on the way here, I was thinking about how do I introduce people who have done it all? You know, they have such great expertise. So I said, you know what, Nasri, don't stress about it. They will introduce themselves to everybody this afternoon. So just going down the line, I'm going to ask Peter, please introduce yourself. And before you do, tell us something interesting about you that the room would never guess.
Which one goes first?
You can go with the less shocking one. Whatever is shocking, you can leave it for later.
Yeah, there are a lot of interesting ones, but for the purposes of this audience, I spent 6 months in China as a tour guide once upon a time. So yeah, probably the highlight of my life. You know, getting into the personals, my name is Peter Ndishu. I'm with a company called Catalyst Fund. Catalyst Fund is a pre-seed investor that's targeting climate tech companies across Africa. So we work closely with the founders, mainly local founders, underrepresented founders as well. We provide capital to actually build the business, but we always bundle this capital with what we call bespoke venture building support, because as you all know, finance, money is not a silver bullet. It's not the only ingredient that's required to actually scale a business. So, happy to talk to almost all of you who are running companies in that space, and excited to be on this panel.
Thank you so much, Peter. Yeah, that's actually in China. And next is Dr. Pratap Kumar. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Thanks. So it's really hard to kind of one-up Peter with his tour guide in China. That is amazing. My surprising thing I would say is I like to curl. Do you know what curling is? Yeah, so I have this ambition of starting the first Indian curling team in the Olympics, and let's see if that ever takes shape. So my name is Pratap. I'm here as the CEO of HealthyNet, which is a startup social enterprise in digital health in Kenya. I also wear another hat. I am a senior academic faculty member at the Strathmore University Business School, where I do some teaching, but mainly do a lot of the research around some of the technologies we develop at HealthyNet. And so it's trying to bring this partnership between technology, startups, and academic research. I have a background in medicine, which I studied a very long time ago. I have a PhD in neuroinformatics, which is an interface between brain science and computation, which is inspiring a lot of our technologies that we develop. And I've worked in the pharma industry as a health economist. So I feel like I have a really good grasp of the global healthcare space and how we can bring technologies into market. And hopefully I can make that reality. I'm still in that journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You see, I was not exaggerating when I said I had an impossible task. So please, Wamboy, please go ahead and do your intro. And I'm waiting. It seems to be increasing as we go down the line.
Oh, great. Way to set me up. I mean, I don't know how to follow Dr. Pratap, but I'll try. Well, first of all, on the curling, I was going to go with something else, but it took me back to when I was in college in my mechatronics class, and we actually developed an automated curling robot. So that was very cool. I bet you half this room has no idea what curling is. We Googled. Anyway, so my background is in medical device development, and I've been an innovator. I've had multiple startups in terms of developing products and solutions in the healthcare space. Currently, I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Vilgro Africa. And what I do is I am now supporting folks across East Africa and a little bit outside of East Africa sometimes that are developing medical technology.
Thank you, Wamboy. Audrey, no pressure.
A lot of pressure. Good afternoon. My name is Audrey, and I work for Swedfund. We're the Swedish Development Finance Institution, investing in Africa and Asia. We've been investing in healthcare for a long time. Between the year 2017 and 2022, I specifically led the healthcare team at Swedfund, and now my role has broadened beyond that. But, I've made healthcare investments in Africa and Asia, and I manage some portfolio companies in healthcare. Something about me, I once trained for one of the Kenyan national teams. Does anyone want to take a guess which sport it was? Not volleyball, no. Another guess? Swimming. Sorry? No. Basketball, yes, you got it. Yes, so I trained with them for a little bit, the women's basketball team, but I was also a student at that time, and I used to teach piano as well to make pocket money, and I decided to stick to those other two things and leave the basketball for others. Yes.
I mean, fascinating. And the other thing that also is a common thread with our panelists is that they're actually alumni of the AVPA fellowship. Just say for Peter, but we can remedy that very shortly. So in 2021, Audrey and Wamboi were part of our cohort around Africa Impact Investing, which we offer, and Dr. Pratap was also part of our healthcare forum. So it's also such an honor to be able to sit here with them a number of years later and to speak on these issues and know the journey that they've been on. So thank you very much to our panelists. For those who may have just come in a bit later, just to introduce myself, I'll be moderating this panel discussion, and my name is Nasri Adam, and I'm the Regional Director for East Africa for AVPA. So we're going to start off the conversation with, just to sort of set the tone, and I'm going to start with Wamboi. What are the challenges that you see and also the opportunities that you see within the healthcare investment space in Africa?
Thank you, Nasri. So I sort of would split that into two pieces. In terms of the opportunities I see, it's that there's a lot that's wide open. There are a lot of problems to solve, and therefore the solutions really become opportunities. I think that, if I wear my medtech hat, there are very few, and many of them are known by Vilgro Africa, very few startups that are actually probably crazy enough to develop medical devices, which is a difficult thing to do. I mean, it takes a long time, it's highly regulated, and so those are challenges that in some ways become opportunities because there's a high barrier of entry. So for those who are willing to go into that space, there's going to be very few of you, so I highly recommend it. Other opportunities is that I think of, in the past few years, I see a lot of investment that's looking for healthcare solutions, and not so much medtech, but we'll get to that at some point, but a lot of investment looking for healthcare solutions. And I think that for those who see problems in the healthcare marketplace, you're in a very good time and a very good place to start those kinds of solutions for healthcare.
Thank you, Wamboi. Dr. Pratap, do you want to just answer or speak to that around the challenges and the opportunities as well?
Yeah, maybe I'll speak on the challenges and try to spin that as an opportunity. I think that a lot of the investors in this room can draw a direct line to some of the VCs that invested in pharma, biotech, and medtech in the 60s and 70s. And that's kind of the biggest, most powerful force that has shaped the medical and healthcare industry globally. And the challenge is that pharma, biotech, and medtech is almost non-existent across Africa. So there's a different approach or different types of startups that we want to be looking at when it comes to shaping African healthcare and healthcare ecosystems. And digital is a great example of that, right? Because there's a huge groundswell of digital talent that is trying to innovate for local markets. But here's the next challenge, right? So if you look at the overlap between the VCs for, if you look at the overlap between VCs for medtech, biotech, and pharma, and the Silicon Valley, there is almost no overlap. The biggest overlap was Theranos, which imploded spectacularly. And so, so that overlap between digital and healthcare globally is quite small, and still there's lots of lessons to be learned. Digital healthcare in Africa is a complete blank slate. So we really have no idea what this path is for taking digital innovations, putting them into healthcare and scaling them with financing, partnerships, and all the other ecosystem support that we need. So I think that's a big challenge, but it's an opportunity, right? So we are shaping that whole space of how does digital affect healthcare in Africa, which is it's a complete unknown from a global perspective.
Thank you. Peter, do you want to also just speak to that as well?
Yeah, so thanks for all those comments. I think from our perspective, thinking about climate technologies, there's, it wasn't really apparent to us that health tech is a category that we should be playing in. But once we started actually looking at the various innovations that are happening across the continent, we actually realized that there's a very strong overlap between climate tech and health tech. And I think the easiest way to explain this is if you think of sort of the food systems and how vulnerable they are to climate change and the kind of nutrition that people are getting. And then secondly, think about the extreme weather events that are actually happening in our own backyards, right? From floods to heat, and all these are actually putting pressure to the health systems. So this is really the challenge, or what we really want to call the opportunity for the purposes of really framing it correctly. And for us, what we're seeing a lot is that there's an opportunity for us to actually marry a lot of technologies that have actually already been built within the continent. For example, if you think about the fintech layers that already exist, so it's easy to actually move money, pay for services. If you think about the ubiquity of digital technologies, mobile phones, and so forth, then all of a sudden, you don't necessarily need to go to the hospital every time you have a cough. And then if you also think about the lifestyles, right? As the middle class is actually growing, you'll find more and more chronic illnesses becoming a major part of the population, right? So how do you actually solve for all these things while really leveraging the technologies that exist? I mean, obviously, there's a huge behavioral change, right? I don't think everything will go fully digital, but at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity to actually be more efficient in terms of how we really kind of offer healthcare as a universal service. Yeah, thanks for that.
Audrey?
I don't know why I sat here. I think I'll be the last one each time, but never mind. They've talked medtech, digital, climate, and health tech. I'll talk about the challenge of access and affordability. Because even as we build all these things, if people cannot afford these services, it means these companies cannot grow. And as investors in healthcare, we've been looking to fund solutions that increase access. Solving the affordability side of things will take. It needs many actors. It needs the government to come in. It needs savings to come in through insurance, social insurance, private insurance. Taxes, I think, should also be put into paying for some of these medical things. So for us who want to deploy large amounts of capital, one of the constraints has been affordability when we look at who's going to come to this facility or who's going to access this. One solution-ish has been blended finance, where you get some first loss or grant funding into some of these solutions to give you time to build. But you can imagine if you came with a digital product and all Kenyans had insurance, 55 million people could access that product or could access 10 similar products. It changes the way that product is used. Or the government could subscribe for 20 million of its population, and then another 20 million maybe pay for themselves or pay through their insurance. It really changes how these products and services and innovations can be scaled. So I think that's a big challenge that needs to be solved by many actors. Development partners, that fund a lot of healthcare, I think, could see how do they partner with the private sector to fund that question of affordability and access. How do you solve it in a way that is sustainable also, right? Because if you solve it for 1 year, and then the next year people build based on that solution that is no longer there in the second year, And then you have all these new facilities that have come in place, and then suddenly the tap runs dry, or the policy changes. I could give an example maybe of NHIF and the way they pay for certain services, and then they stop, and then they start, and people are building based on that demand, right? Or yes, that they will come and procure 10,000 tests, yeah? So I think that's a big challenge that all of us can put our heads together to continue to try and solve. What could I say on, I think Africans, and not only Africans maybe, but I feel that we're averse to insurance or saving towards healthcare. Yeah, there's that part of my friends will help me, or my cousins will help me, or my, how do we put money towards that in advance before it happens, right? There's group schemes, let's remove private insurance that your employer gets for you. And maybe in Kenya, we're fortunate, we have NHIF, right? Some countries don't have such policies. So it means if your employer doesn't pay for you or you have savings, you probably have nothing towards healthcare. So it's just how do we think about solutions around saving for healthcare in a sustainable way? Yeah.
Nasri, I would love to comment on something that Audrey said.
Go for it.
And it has to do with access and affordability. And you know, one of the things that we talk about a lot is the fragmentation of markets in Africa. And the fact that the markets in any one country are way too small for startups and entrepreneurs and people who are coming up with these solutions to really get a significant return on investment that would make a VC happy. And so, especially when you're talking about regulated items and solutions, whether it's digital or med tech or whatever, or what have you, we have to figure out how to consolidate our markets so that something that I develop in Kenya can be sold in South Africa or in Nigeria just as well.
Thanks, Wamboi. And so I think that's a really good lead up to our next question, which Pratap will ask you, is around investment strategies for this particular market. What are the considerations that you feel are really pertinent and key and really would be drivers for both sides of that investment conversation?
Yeah, so I passionately believe this, that we can't wait for this, the market ecosystem to change very quickly, right? So we can't expect somehow the markets will get consolidated. And so how does a startup work in this constraint? My personal belief, and that's how we've been working with at HealthyNet, is that we have to have diverse market segments, which goes against the 101 of entrepreneurship, which says focus on the customer segment and completely understand that one segment and deliver your product to that segment. And if governments change, if NHIF changes, if one NGO runs out of grants, you're stuck. And that's exactly what's happened to so many startups, is that their main market segment that they've been focusing on dries up because of the nature of the markets. And I don't think it's feasible for startups or it's right for investors to say to a startup, just stay in your lane and work on the private sector, which is heavily fragmented, or the government, which has huge risks and long sales cycles, or the NGOs, which are grant funded. So you can't really rely on any one of these customer segments. So it's really important that I think investors understand that it's very hard to use a traditional startup model to work in this space. And the second thing I'd say is I think again, where our focus is that data is that fundamental limiting factor for growth of most businesses. And it's not just generating data because you now have a platform. It's about finding that path to how that data is going to be monetizable and scalable. And I think that's a really hard problem. But I think it's important for investors to say, take a very hard look at, all this data, that's great. I don't think that's enough. It's about saying, how does this data get monetized in a very clear fashion?
Peter, especially given your background, you were formerly with GSMA and now you're, with Catalyst Fund. What are those, sort of insights that you can give to this investment strategies and what works and what you've seen hasn't worked? I think there are a couple of people in the room who'd also like to know what didn't work that you were also witness to.
Yeah, when I was thinking about this question, to be honest, there's no secret bullet. There's no magic pill. I think for me it all boils down to the appropriateness of the technology and really the situation, right? And this really you could boil this down to thinking about the people, right? Why are they getting into this? What problem are they solving? What's the opportunity that they're actually seeing? And for us, as a company, that's why we sort of tend to bundle our support with not only capital, but actually venture building support to really say, okay, you have all these tools, you have machine learning, you have AI, but why do you really care about this problem? And because almost often you'll find a lot of surprises on the road to actually building, on the road to solving problems. You might start thinking that you're serving a very niche market, and it turns out that your customers are spread all over, right? And if you go to Uganda, say you're in Kenya, then it's a completely different ballgame, right? So what will really make you stick? What's that grit that will actually allow you to actually still keep pushing even when things are really, really tough? So I think for us, it's mainly about the people. Obviously, I think also thinking about the problem, it needs to be big enough because essentially the problem is big enough. Then that means as a company, you can really capture a lot of the value that you're creating. I think, for example, if you think about the healthcare space, there's about 400 million people who do not have access to health services. And there's another 100 million people every year who will just become poor, mainly because of health-related bills, right? So if you get into this space, then you already have a big captive audience, but how you do it, related to the nuances of your market, I think really allows you to capture the value. I think coming back to your question around some of the successes, I think thinking about technology often, I think of it as a tool. It's not really, so you match the problem and to the tool that is going to really enable you to deliver the value. So a lot of the times you find innovations that are using a lot of buzzwords like AI, blockchain, big words. But when you actually get into just the analytics of it and really understanding how the customer interacts with the product, the problem that they're trying to solve, there's not really a strong case for all these technologies, right? So I think building with the customer in mind, always, the customer will really point you in the right direction and help you pick the right tool to actually solve the problem.
Thanks, Peter, for that insight. Audrey, I'd like you to speak to something that we spoke about when we're kind of thinking through how to approach this discussion point today, which was COVID happened, and as in my opening remarks, I said we thought everything was going to change as relates to healthcare funding. What has been the reality since?
So we invest as a financial minority investor. What that means is that we have to work with other investors in the projects that we do because we are not healthcare experts, but we come together with other investors, and within that investor group, there needs to be then an investor or investors in that consortium who have healthcare as deep expertise. So it could be that they've invested in healthcare for many years. It could be that they are a strategic investor. It could be that they are a hospital group looking to expand. So that's how we work, and then we complement financially. And we find that I've seen a number of projects where we struggle to find other investors to join us because we're not able to take all the ticket by ourselves. And so those projects don't move because of lack of other investors coming together. We also invest through funds, private equity funds. Some of them are healthcare-focused funds, some are generalist funds. And even those funds, some of them, it has taken them time to raise capital. You find maybe there's 2 or 3 investors interested, but they need another 3 or 4 to take it to the next step. So I think my sense, and this is from my experience, it could be different, right? From where I sit, my sense is that the funding towards healthcare is reducing. That's my sense, yeah? And especially, you know, there's the small early stage funding, maybe that there's still pockets of that, and the three of you, I think, can speak to that. But if I think of now long-term capital needed to bring bigger healthcare assets to operation, if you're thinking of hospitals or large-scale medical equipment, where you're looking at $10 million, $20 million tickets and up, I see like there are less investors interested in doing that. But that's just my sense, and it would be interesting to hear from some of you in the room. I see some healthcare companies here, so it'd be nice to hear your thoughts on that, and maybe I've not seen that many healthcare investors out there. I see Chris, and yeah, but yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what the experience is from your side, and maybe some of you on the floor. Yeah.
So, Dr. Pratap, in terms of where you sit in terms of academia, and also thinking through how that has informed some of these discussions over the years, and also towards this issue of public-private partnerships. Can you give us that sort of lens to this discussion? So Audrey's sort of kind of told us, okay, yes, there's money, but we're all doing different things with our money. So what is, in terms of academia and also the public-private sector?
Thank you. I probably am wearing a minority hat here when it comes to academia doing research in health and health tech. And so just a bit of a background, we've raised many $1 million on research grants around some of the technologies that we want to deploy. And the reason behind this is going back to this idea of how do VCs invest in health tech, med tech, biotech. It's through early stage investments in spin-offs from universities. Right, so that's kind of the engine of innovation in health and engineering and many other places globally. And those spin-offs are on a clear track of proving a certain, getting the product to be more mature, doing the early stage clinical trials, and being able to get an exit into a large pharma company or medical tech company. And that is a really well-proven model, and the interest in the academic is very much in that area. So there's a lot of interest in funding early and mid-stage trials and research around developing or emerging technologies. So this is the NIH in the US, or the National Institute of Healthcare Research, NIHR, and Medical Research Council in the UK, and to some extent the European Commission. These are not the most commonly seen investors in healthcare. It's which tend to be the DFIs to a large extent. And so the academic funding into healthcare is a separate pillar that I wouldn't say I have great understanding of, but I think it's an important pillar that allows a lot of the early stage work to be done. So my own personal model is that I can raise these funds to be able to do the early stage research into the technologies that we develop or the approaches that we develop. In a more traditional model, that would be a partnership between an entrepreneur or a startup with an academic institution. And this happens in Kenya with typically, like Jacaranda Health is a really good example, where you bring in research funding and partnerships with Harvard and other global institutions to do those that kind of research. But that ecosystem needs to be local, needs to be within Africa to develop not only the research techniques for early stage evidence demonstration, but also these effective partnerships between local startups and the academic partners that can demonstrate impact. And so I think it's a very ignored part of the healthcare ecosystem funding, at least from an entrepreneurial side, which I think needs to change.
And if I can And I think that funding, I think the government has to play a hand in it, right? In some of it, especially in Africa, because if they don't step in to do that, I think sometimes you have to help yourself first, and then people come and help you. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get. Yeah, there's a lot of politics around that, right? So why isn't the government funding KEMRI enough, and why are there not many startups from KEMRIs and ILRIs coming into the local market?
Not Kenya specific, but let me say African governments. Okay, they need to come in and fund that space, right? That research, because some of these investors have there's different types of investors, right? With different types of capital. In Europe and the US and some of these other advanced markets, they understand, or I don't know, let me not use the word understand, but I guess they have had a long track record of developing innovations with universities, so it's very understood, and there are people, even risk capital is willing to take punts on things like that. But here I think it's still something nascent, so someone has to take that first step. So African governments, I see a few corporates, pharma corporates, and some of those people also playing in that space. Yeah. But more funding is definitely needed.
And I think another piece to that.
Just before Wamboi goes, and you see, this is good, yes? Just before she goes, I'm sure some of you have some questions already sort of churning away. I'm going to ask Abby to just share some paper for you so that you can be able to start to think through some of those questions. We're just about to invite you with your questions in a bit. But Wamboi, please go ahead. And as you do, I'd like you also to speak towards this sort of divide between medtech investments and digital health investments as well, because I think there's also a nuance to that we would like to have in this conversation.
I think the comment I wanted to make is that the other piece to this conversation is about the history of technology transfer from universities into the private sector. And a lot of research is done in Africa. And why does it not translate into commercialized solutions and products? I think those technology transfer offices have not quite gotten. There's something that we haven't quite gotten. Now, I don't know about Strathmore, but I know with the public universities, there are a lot of issues around transferring IP or really understanding what the split between the university and the rest of the world should be. And I was afraid I'd forget what your other question was.
So the medtech versus digital health and how that investment space looks like.
Okay, so when I talk about medtech, I'm really talking about hardware. I'm talking about devices, for the most part, and diagnostics. And the problem with hardware is that it's hard. I mean, it takes a long time to go from a concept to a device that's in the market. And Pratap, I don't want to say that digital is easy, because nothing is easy. But it takes a shorter time to develop a digital solution. For the most part, I'm watching your face, for the most part, than a hardware solution. And the regulations, or lack thereof, in our markets, really hobble people who are developing hardware solutions to an extent that a lot of those solutions get left by the wayside and don't actually get completed, because there really aren't good processes, there aren't solid processes to get those across the finish line, which is what we're really trying to do at Vilgrow Africa, is to hold the entrepreneurs' hand and get them through those hurdles, so that we can get to a place where we actually have something that's gone through clinical trials, has gone through all the regulatory ISO standards, has a quality management system, and all of those things that when we go in front of a VC, we are now able to say this is a thing that can actually go into the market and actually be a good business investment.
Thank you for that. So for Peter, how do we then work together? How do we get these things done? So we have, ideas in the room already around the fact that there is fragmentation. There's fragmentation in terms of effort, in terms of knowledge, whether it's academia, and also proud University of Nairobi alumni. So what is it that we can do better in terms of collaborating around this space? And you have said it, that you can't look at it in isolation, healthcare. Something Audrey said to me as we were talking, as we were getting to know each other, was that how do you do anything without being okay, without being healthy? Healthcare is critical, it's central. So how are we able to then work together a lot more? And just before you do that, this event is being live streamed. And so for those who also want to ask questions, who are watching us from wherever they may be around the globe, please feel free to put the questions in the chat. And Peter, please.
Yeah, so certainly I think we need a lot more of these platforms. I think personally I'm really learning a lot about the innovations in my own backyard. I didn't know until this moment about the amazing research activities and creation activities that are happening at Strathmore. So I'd be curious to see, who are the startups or innovations that are ready to market, and are there innovations that we can actually start taking up as investors and actually start backing them up from day one, so that they don't make common mistakes that are really hard to correct down the road, right? And that's where we spend a lot of our time, right? Really trying to figure out, okay, what are the right product choices that the company should be making? What is the right technology that they should actually be building ahead of their seed round? What are the conversations they should be having with investors, even as they build, right? So you need to be focusing on all these things. What kind of messaging should you be sending out to your potential customers, right? And that also for investors who are actually looking for larger ticket sizes, I think then they'll find a healthier pipeline that is probably more palatable for them, and that has already kind of gone through the checklist on their own, and actually really prepare themselves for the moment when the investors come on the table. So I'd say I think it's more of this, more of us sort of knowing what innovations are happening in our own backyards. And I think by backyard, you can extrapolate that to the whole continent of Africa. So thanks for setting this up, and really keen to also learn from everyone who's here, and also meet all the startups who are already creating and building.
Maybe just to add to what you said, I think funding for some of those early ideas. We've seen VCs in fintech in Africa very eager, but health tech, I don't think there's as much funding as fintech or med tech, or the funding in that space is a lot smaller. So you need, I think, that very pre-seed, seed, Series A funding for that space. And I think some of it has to be local. Angel investors, people who've made money. So I guess as our fintech entrepreneurs make money, they also come back as investors, yeah? And I think that's the case in India. If you look at the early stage investors, many of them were unicorn founders who've come back to invest in their system. So it could be that maybe 10 years from now, we'll not be saying seed is a problem, Series A is a problem, maybe it's Series B now that becomes a problem, yeah? But I think here in Vilgro, you do a lot of work in that pre-seed, seed, and Series A, right? Or used to, at least.
No, we do. And I think one of the things that we need to do is have more coalitions of investment. So the blended finance, sort of, where we go up to where we can, and then we need to have a coalition with the bigger people, the deeper pockets, who can take the companies to the next step.
Just sorry to interject. I think just to give you an example of a company that we are working with, we recently invested in a company called Medicare. It's mainly a hybrid solution that has brick and mortar clinics, but they can also offer the telemedicine platform, do the lab tests remotely. And when we went in, we thought it was predominantly an equity play, but what's really becoming clear that even before they actually do their seed round, they're actually going to need debt, right? So debt to actually build out more clinics and densify their distribution channels, and then kind of use those clinics to build footfall into their premises, and then now actually sell the telemedicine, right? So if you looked at it, you might think it's a digital technology right off the bat, but actually they need to also be still brick and mortar to actually win over the hearts and minds of the customers, right? And now debt is actually needed earlier than most businesses in the VC world would actually need the debt.
But this would be venture debt.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think you can tell we could go on, but we just want to also invite you and some of the questions. So if you do have some questions that you've noted down, I think this is an opportunity for the panel to sort of speak to that. So this is just a request that those be handed over, I guess, to the front, if possible, Abby.
Peter, as we have this company of yours, there are a lot of clinics already. I don't know who they are, but I'm just wondering, why would they want to set up their own clinics if maybe they could partner? And I know there are people here with clinics. I'm not going to mention names, but I see them. So why, maybe they could partner with existing clinics, perhaps.
Yeah, but I think this raises a really important point that there aren't enough partnerships, right? And I think one of the challenges is that people are forced to do everything. So clinics, setting up brick and mortar clinics, setting up the telemedicine technology, setting up the electronic medical records technology, and becoming not just a service provider, but a technology developer as well, which is hard for any startup to do. And I think you see a lot of that in this market, which is, I think, not healthy, but I think there's a really important investor role to say, I feel you can, the way I see this, like I made the point that you can't be focused on one customer segment, but I think the focusing on your strength, I think, is still a truth. There needs to be one strength that you need to focus on as a startup.
All right, so we'll start with Dr. Wala. Thank you very much for joining us today. And please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for the panel. I think speaking over quite some experience in this space, there's a lot of duplication, and some of us are maybe privileged to sit on some of the evaluation committees. I'm yet to find anything unique about all this, many of the health innovations, quote unquote. There's a lot of repetition, duplication, and I don't know whether we need maybe a database of what's available out there. One, maybe AVPA, you can champion that. One single database where, you know, all these interested partners can plug in so that you're not, we have so many silos, a repetition. The other thing is, I think what's different for us is that we are very highly regulated. So fintech and agri-tech and all these other techs don't have that unique aspect to it. So it's very hard to also just wake up and put up something. And then the third thing that I wanted to comment about is most of these innovations are coming from non-medics. And I think they imagine a solution and then now they look for the problem. So if we have the other way where there's a lot of involvement of the medics, even encouraging or training our medics to come up with these innovations, because then they know the problems they're facing. So if you have that merger of the innovators who are non-medics with the medics actually in the space that they're providing, then that would be great. But I'd be very happy to see an innovation that's unique in this health space. So maybe the next panel is bringing that up. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the goal. That's the dream. So I have a question to Audrey, and I think some of these may come some common themes. So I'm just going to ask a couple of the questions first. So how do you de-risk public government, partnerships in terms of accessing, I think, capital, so the private sector is more comfortable with bringing solutions to the wider citizenry? And then the other question is, perhaps the innovation in healthcare financing should include integration with other funding as an essential part of the three, for e.g. climate funding to include healthcare funding. So Peter, you might want to answer that one in a bit. Is perhaps the innovation in healthcare financing should include integration with other funding as an essential part of thereof, e.g. climate funding to include healthcare funding. So that one, I think. I don't know whether we want to take any comments, maybe if there's no specific question. Abby.
I can be attempting the
yes,
first
please.
one, right? De-risking public.
How do you de-risk public or government so that the private sector is more comfortable bringing solutions to the wider citizenry?
That's a tough one, eh? It depends on the government, and I'm talking about Africa and Asia because that's where those are the markets we invest in. So I'm not singling out any government. I think the track record of that government towards honoring, when it says it will do something or when it initiates something, how do they act? There are countries where you see a lot of collaboration between the private sector and the public sector. The private sector is selling a lot of services to the public sector, or the government is buying a lot of services or certain services, within certain models, if it's capitation or certain price limits, and the private sector is able to plan well in advance for the demand and the price point. And I think when that works, it's good for healthcare, because the public sector buys in bulk. They buy a lot, right? So then, the private providers, and of course they will want to pay as low as possible, yeah? So that push and pull helps the development of the health system, because private providers can plan in advance, buy in bulk, reduce prices, and then more people get access. So where maybe that doesn't exist, then the private players have to sort of balance their customer base, right? You don't put all your chickens all your eggs in one basket, not your chickens. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. So maybe you have some private clients or private insurance. Maybe you have employers who buy from you services as well. So you see how to balance that, because at the end of the day, you have to pay your healthcare workers, isn't it? Your pharma companies, Boehringer, they're not giving you drugs for free, Chris, yeah? You have to pay for those drugs. You have to buy equipment. You have to pay for electricity, right? You need water. And you have to run your facility to provide quality service. So then you balance. And where you can't, then I guess you just can't be in business, right?
Yeah.
You can't do...
Pratab, you're itching.
Yeah, no, I think this raises an important point, and most of what Audrey mentions is buying drugs, beds, devices. And I think, so the first thing to say is that Kenya is a great place for doing business with the government, because there are 47 governments to do business with. And so you have a great competitive environment that you can search. It's not just one national government. But the flip side is that the governments know how to procure a bed, how to procure a drug, how to procure a doctor to provide a service. They have no idea how to procure a digital service. And that is one of the big gaps, I think, in this current environment. So again, bringing that difference between medtech and digital tech, yes, it might be easier to start off a digital product, but how do you get this into the market is a huge problem, because nobody knows how to procure this.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, when it comes to hardware, you have the same problem, because our systems are set up for importation. Anything that you build locally is very, very difficult to get into the system, whether it's hardware or software or whatever it is. Well, there are a few places where that is not true, like Rwanda. But in general, it is the case that it is very difficult to get into the public system, and it's very difficult to scale without the public sector in Africa.
I think Arif had something to add. You can borrow my mic. Okay, cool.
No, thanks. Thanks very much. What an amazing discussion. So I just had two quick ones. One was my concern on whether a lot of the innovations, but also a lot of the financing, is focusing where Africa needs it most, which really is my passion around primary healthcare, preventive, promotive, household level, as opposed to PET scans, CAT scans, and secondary, tertiary. Are we really focusing where Africa needs this most? We can't take 55 Kenyans to secondary and tertiary. And the second question is something that came up when we went with Joe Mucheru to Silicon Valley, which says that a study at Strathmore identified the length of time it takes to register an IP, and a particular study that was done at Strathmore that identified over 80% of IPs that eventually registered were actually non-Kenyans. So we just became a sandbox. And are we losing those IPs because kids sell their IPs prematurely for $5,000 cash, and the entrepreneur makes the next 50 million in Silicon Valley? We need to just kind of address this question of how do you protect African IPs?
Thank you. There's a lady on the other side. Yes, I think two ladies who are looking for the mic. I think it's behind you.
I have it.
Okay. Okay, good.
All right, sorry. So my name is Ruth. I'm in charge of partnerships and resource mobilization. I work for the Health NGOs Network. I wanted to speak into what Zuri has said, and a bit of what you're addressing in terms of the health financing. In Uganda, there has been, can I call it a collaboration or a partnership between government and the health cooperatives that has been there for 25 years. And what they have done is to provide health financing for what we're calling the indigents, where you get in yourself SACCO, a savings and credit cooperative, you borrow the money, and then the cooperative pays for you your health insurance, and therefore the issue of access and affordability gets addressed on that angle. Those discussions to Kenya, they are here, but I hope it actually bears fruit.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Endo Sahar from Baringo County. I don't know how many are from Baringo here. Thank you so much for having grassroots in this convening. I'm thinking that 67% of Kenyans live in rural areas like me. And I'm just wondering, looking at all of you and hearing about, I don't know, what was that? Something tech, something tech, something tech. But then Mr. Abu was very kind to the rural woman, saying that 98% is actually paid off in terms of loans, yet they are the least to access healthcare. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective, what more can you do to ensure that every woman in Kenya has access to healthcare? The second question is, we know what our president currently has launched, electronic community health information systems, with over 100,000 community health volunteers in our villages collecting data. What are we doing with that data, number one? Number two, where are you plugging in so that we ensure that everybody has access to healthcare? Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to try and combine some of that feedback, if possible. So I'll ask Pratap to sort of speak to some of the numbers that Arif has sort of touched on, and then open up to anybody who wants to answer, the second part of her question around, there is data, it exists, how are we actually deploying this information to be able to make informed decisions around these bankable ideas that are coming along our way. And we will add on to the other questions as well. So let's start with that.
Okay, I'll try and be coherent. It's a lot of things to cover. First thing around IP and IP protection, I would say the IP, global IP regulations are hugely inequitable, and I don't think, and that's a different fight. But with digital, I don't think IP is a big issue. So most digital technologies don't try and get patent protections. There's a different approach to the market. The second is, what kind of the IPs coming in from outside of Kenya. I would say that is kind of the global, there are two answers to that. One is with medical devices, medical technologies, the technologies are going to come from outside of Kenya because that local industry doesn't exist. But it's the business model, I think, that is really what is, I think, a more insidious force. Because we have a business model for these innovations in a Western country where you have a high paying margin and a smaller population. And then you have the large India and China model where everybody's trying to work towards the middle class, which is very urban, and and you're working with huge populations and so high volumes and low margins. But Africa does not have the luxury of that. So we have 70% of the population living, this is Kenya, but much more in other countries. And so the innovations around this low, high efficiency, high volume, low margin business models do not really work in an African setting because you don't have those volumes. And so there is a different type of, we need a different innovation, different approaches to target rural women. So, and I'll end by saying that we develop our technologies to work in Turkana. We've been working in Turkana since 2015. And our approach is that if it works in Turkana, it can work anywhere. And that is kind of the model that we try and use to say, okay, let's develop technologies from a rural African perspective. There are two kind of frontiers with global health. One is slum populations where you have antibiotic use, drug resistance, violence, huge challenges in the urban informal settlements. And the other is the rural settlements, which are hard to reach, very far away. So if we can target these two populations, that's where we can have maximum impact.
Yeah, Wamboi, do you want to speak to the question around data points and that there's data actually that sits somewhere, but we're not really doing anything about it? And then to the First Lady's point around, there is examples of collaboration between the private and public sector, and how we able maybe to drive some of that, these ideas through that. Thank you.
In terms of data and how we use data, I don't know where that data is going. I actually don't know if it is actually being aggregated so that we could use it, but it would be brilliant if we could get all this data that's coming from the community health workers and be able to understand what the problems on the ground are so that we actually are innovating to solve those problems. I completely agree with you, but I have absolutely no idea, and I don't know if anyone in this room has an idea where the data that's coming from the community health workers is being aggregated. I would love to know. I would really love to know. I did want to comment on IP because that is a very important conversation that we need to be having more of. And in some ways, that conversation partners with a conversation about who is innovating locally and who is getting the funding to innovate, right? So if I am an innovator, an entrepreneur, and I'm trying to develop a medical device, and somebody offers me the $5,000 to give up my IP, and VCs are not at all interested in funding my, my device because it's going to take 10 years to get to market, I'll take the $5,000. And that's problematic. And if we don't have these coalitions of investors that will take this entrepreneur from the place where they urgently need $5,000 to the place where they can put their device in the market, then we will continue to have that problem where 80% of the IP is not held by local innovators. And so I think it's a bigger conversation than just the IP, that we need to sit together and really, as investors, impact investors in the early stage and, like I keep saying, downstream, we need to really tackle how to handle this.
Thank you. Peter, do you want to, there was a question that was on one of the cards. I'm giving you my mic, don't worry, that I'd like you to just speak to as well.
So I think the question on the card was around telemedicine, and I think the lady from Baringo also brought it up in terms of telemedicine technology, building technology that can be accessed by all types of users, including those in rural areas. So I think around telemedicine, maybe there's a myth around what it means to actually do telemedicine, right? I think the thing that comes to mind when people say telemedicine is that, you know, you're on a video chat and the doctor is logging in from the other end and you're having a real-time conversation. That's one way of thinking about it, but it could also be a WhatsApp chatbot, right? That is engaging with you and actually maybe you want to procure medicine. Maybe you have an ailment that you want to maybe share the symptoms, right? So it could be as rudimentary as that, and it can actually be a USSD as well, USSD database that you're querying, right? It could be an SMS survey that is being run on your phone, right? So there are very many tools in the toolbox beyond the video conferencing, and these technologies, you could argue, are much more accessible to everyone, right? So I think telemedicine is, it can even be bundled with existing healthcare services that are face-to-face to make the delivery more efficient, right? So in terms of its growth, which was the question around that, with COVID, I think COVID has really changed how we live. I think face-to-face interactions are not always required these days, and I think technology really comes in there to really enable these interactions in digital spaces. And I think if I was to make a bet, I would say for sure, I think you'll see even the old guards, the industry incumbents, starting to really adapt or really take up a lot of these technologies in terms of how they really think about healthcare delivery.
Yes, Pratap. I'm going to go with your last one, and then Wambui, and then Audrey.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Last word. I'll make it count. This is great, Peter, to hear you saying that, because we wrote a paper a couple of years ago called, and the title is Telemedicine in Turkana. You can Google that. It's very easy to find, where we focus on this idea of asynchronous interactions. So it's not about real-time telemedicine, but it's asynchronous, and where the power of asynchronous telemedicine really is. So that's a really important point, and yeah, thanks for making that. Sorry, the market. I am of the opinion that things have come back to a pre-COVID status. I was looking at the search trend for telemedicine over the last 5 years. There was a peak around March and April of 2020, and now it's back to pre-COVID levels. We rolled out our telemedicine work with Britam. For every customer of Britam, we conducted hundreds of teleconsultations, but then the demand just fell away. So I think we're going back to, our memories are short. I think we're going back to pre-COVID approaches.
Wambui.
I do agree that our memories are very short, and it's very unfortunate, because I do remember during COVID how excited people were that we were developing our own medical technology, and it was, go Africa. But what I do want to say about telemedicine from two things from a device perspective. One is that to efficiently do telemedicine, and I was having this conversation with Daphne, we need to have good devices that can communicate between wherever you are and whoever you're doing telemedicine with, right? And we need to develop those so that they take into account whatever it is that is the reality on the ground. So if you're in Baringo and maybe we believe that everybody is connected, everyone on the planet, everyone on the continent is connected, to the internet and has electricity. I know that's not the case, right? And so if we are making those assumptions and putting devices in place that cannot work if you're not connected or if you don't have power, then you're really missing the boat. And so we have to really understand what the needs are from a hardware, a software, and infrastructure perspective to be able to meet the needs of the people in the rural areas. The second point that I want to make is about remote access, because I think that is a very key conversation when you're talking about devices, because as we know, we don't have sufficient providers across the continent. So for example, if you need to have x-rays or I don't want to talk about ultrasounds because Pratap will give me the stink eye, but any kind of imaging or diagnostics that you want to do, you may not have the expertise on the ground. And so having the ability to have remote access so that an expert can speak into the care that a patient needs to get once you've done the imaging, which needs to be simple imaging that anyone, a clinical officer can, or even a community health worker can take care of out in the rural areas, then we're talking about telemedicine that is actually working with the systems that we have in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Wambui. Audrey.
So I come back to affordability and Ruth's comments on the SACCOs in Uganda. We see bits and pieces here and there. There was a pilot in Makueni County together with AMREF and Philips and a few other players that every household had healthcare cover, and there were facilities they could go and visit, and those facilities had equipment and doctors, and so that whole chain, people started accessing healthcare and saying, okay, I feel sick, I can go to a doctor, I can seek care. Do we use actuaries in quantifying healthcare risks in this country? I don't think so, right? Maybe the insurance companies might do that, but we should be using actuaries, right, to advise us how much do we need to save towards healthcare, who cannot afford healthcare. So then, you have taxes or government for indigents specifically, SACCOs, maybe out of every shilling you buy a Coca-Cola, some of it goes to healthcare, something from the fuel, something from here, kidogo kidogo, a little into this pot so that people can afford healthcare. Then there's the issue of, so people now have healthcare, can afford healthcare. Are there enough hospitals and places for them to seek healthcare? So on the financing side, we do have banks that can finance healthcare facilities. They will probably provide long-term debt. There could be working capital. Medical credit fund plays in that space. I think IFC has a medical equipment financing facility playing in that space. And then equity. So that's where long-term investors come and provide the equity for the long-term projects, for the digital, the telemedicines, the innovations. You have your VC investors who understand that space. So that financing can be found if there are people who can seek these services. On your question about primary care and your healthcare workers, I think many African countries, we have volunteer healthcare workers. Some of them get paid. These people are on the ground. I'd like to think there's nobody over 18 in Kenya who doesn't have a phone today, right? And many African countries, or access to a phone, or a household with a phone, right? These telephones, what are we doing with them? They can be used to do so much. How much money goes into betting? How much in Kenya? Imagine just if that money can be mobilized towards that, then there could be money mobilized towards healthcare, working with healthcare workers, working with telcos, because they reach everybody, right? Everybody has a phone, Safaricom or Airtel or MTN, wherever they are in Africa. How do you have your primary care physical facilities, your healthcare workers, your telcos, all these wonderful solutions sitting here? All of those things have to come together to solve this challenge.
I mean, and that is a great way, I think, for us to wrap up this amazing panel. Please, everybody, give them a round of applause. I think that was such a great job. And thank you so much again. And please, we want to go into about a 10-minute break. I know it's been sort of us speaking to you, but just a 10-minute break of coffees and teas that you will find on the side of the room. Come back now to listen to some of those amazing pitches that we've been talking about. I think that's the next part of it. We've talked about all the opportunities, all the challenges, and now let's see what's out there, or let's get a taste of what's out there. So please grab a coffee, grab a tea, and thank you so much for all your attention and energy towards this panel discussion. Thank you. program. And we've had a very interesting panel session. And what I really love about our panel is every time I speak to them, even on one-to-one, I always learn something new. So I hope it was informative. I hope it evoked some thinking. And I also hope some of it was also a bit controversial and got us to start to think about things from a different lens. So thank you for all your attention and contribution during the panel. So we'd like to now move to the program along towards our pitches for the afternoon. And this is really now sort of also wanting to go full circle. So for our panel discussions, we have expressed what the problems are, what the solutions are. And I think something that really stood out for me as I was listening was the fact that as innovators and entrepreneurs, we have to be investor ready. We have to have the education in terms of the knowledge to know exactly what these investors are, and to use the word that is used often, to be bankable. You know, I know it sounds very crude when you say it like that, but that's what they think about, isn't it? So we want to be able to start to draw out some of that in the pitches that will be before you today. We have a total of 7. Pitches that we'll be pitching in the next couple of minutes. But before I do, I just wanted to put someone on the spot, and they might be a bit upset with me for doing so. But our board chair is here, actually. So Mr. Joe Gutu is the board chair for AVPA, and he was very kind to join us. And Mr. Gutu is actually with the Safaricom Foundation, and is really been critical in building out AVPA in this region. And thank you so much for being part of this conversation today. And maybe I can give you for 1 minute just to introduce yourself, and you know, you must have the board chair happy with you guys. So
thank you for putting me on the spot. It's really good to see so many of you here, partners, friends. What AVPA is trying to do is exactly what has taken place today. Bringing together people who are knowledgeable in different sectors, different areas, and start building a knowledge base that we can then use to lobby, to be able to influence policy formulation and policy direction. So I'm really looking forward to engaging with you. This is the first one, but I'm really looking forward to engaging with you on an ongoing basis in some of the sessions that we'll be planning for the rest of the year and beyond. So please enjoy, interact, and AVPA is here to have such interactive sessions. Thank you very much, and God bless.
thank you very much, Joe. So I have now the pleasure of introducing my colleague, Tafadzwa Nyangano. He will be able to tell you more. He's the one who leads our DealShare platform and is also our CFO. So all things money flow through this guy. So you're very welcome, Ta.
Thank you, Nazri. I was tempted to say, welcome to the point you've been all waiting for, but after listening to the panel, it was such an experience for me. Let me talk about quickly 3 experiences I've had in the past 3 days, which are, maybe for lack of a better term, out-of-body experiences. Flying to Kenya, to Nairobi, it was a 5-hour flight. 3 months ago, I had a medical procedure, and I didn't know the effect of the cabin pressure on the medical procedure. So I'm here, but I'm worried I still have to go back. Thank you, Audrey. I'll stay here. Please just write home and tell them. Secondly, I took a walk to the mall, and I wore shorts. My ex-fix was showing. I actually asked someone, "Is everyone this nice? Is it always?" Because I'm coming from South Africa, where we get worried if someone is nice to you. So So to have that experience where the entire mall was nice to me, it's memorable. And then today, I was asking myself, how did I find myself in this room, you know, with so much expertise? And like many bean counters would say, or would know, there's nothing fulfilling about accounting. But I'm privileged to have an extension to my work, which is leading the dealership platform, where I get to interact with social impact investors. I get to interact, most importantly, with social entrepreneurs, people who are making the world we're living in a better place. So, if you allow me, just to speak a bit to the problem. And my favorite quote or saying is that the future is history awaiting to repeat itself unless something changes. I think all the problems we face now, there is nothing that's going to change. We are certain to miss our SDG goals come 2030 unless there are some drastic changes. And as the panel was speaking, Audrey, thank you for bringing up, when you mentioned the government, as a Zimbabwean, I would ask what government, right? But I think we need to break down the silos of trying to solve the problems that we have. If you're looking in dollar terms, we're talking 1.2 trillion as an annual funding gap for SDGs. But in as much as it is a lot of money, that's only 1% of the money that's sitting in financial assets within the private sector. So the question is, how do we bring the private sector into this space, which we all know the returns are not favorable, they're not lucrative for them, right? I think Wambui did mention that, how are we going to get VCs to actually look at this space as something they can walk into, and given the low returns? So we are then calling, as AVPA, to say we need, something has to change, otherwise we're bound to fail, right? How do we have the right-minded human capital who understand this investment space? How are we going to get our Silicon Valley investors to come to Africa and sort of not lower their expectations, but meet that level ground so that money and capital can actually start flowing, right? In this case, I've heard people say there's less investable pipeline than there is more capital in Africa. Partly this is true, right? But we would argue and say, I think there's just not enough catalytic capital, you know, risk capital, failure capital. And that's the magnitude of capital we need to increase and allow people, all these startups, to actually have the opportunity to grow to a point where they can then attract private capital. This said, in the next few minutes, you get to hear from some of the amazing entrepreneurs within the healthcare space that we have had the privilege to deal with, and that are currently, that will be listed on our dealership platform. Now, what is this dealership platform? The dealership platform is a platform, I would call it a strategic pillar of what we're trying to achieve at AVPA, where we're allowing investors like yourselves to come onto this platform to discover, to endorse, and to sort of collaborate on investable, high-quality investable pipeline, right? On this platform, you are able to access deals, so receive tailored notifications, and connect with other Pan-African social investors, right? We believe that if you, as investors, if one investor has already done the due diligence to a level that, you know, satisfactory to them, it will probably help the next investor start at the next stage, because there is so much money that's going into DD. Speaking of the dealership platform, and maybe just to give some highlights on the traction it has had, we have 149 active investors on our platform. And of these 149, there's 12 different types, from high net worth individuals, DFIs, corporates, foundations. We also have people that are deploying non-financial capital, you know, in universities, and people providing technical assistance. But the one element that excites me about the dealership platform is they are recorded 48 countries in which these investors are active. And 48, to me, that screams Africa. I'm talking 48 African countries, right? So we are, maybe someone can correct me, I think we're only 6 short to have the entirety of Africa covered. And I would want to thank Timothy, USAIDF. They did fund what I call Development 1.0, sort of the Dealshare platform. And our partners at African Development Bank have funded the 2.0. So the website is currently undergoing a lot of changes, which will allow social investors to be on the platform, and hopefully to our mission to get capital flowing into these initiatives. Currently, if you go to the platform, you check, we have 53 active deals, which are trying to mobilize or to raise 54 million. And these are in 23 distinct countries, right? Now, the other question I had for myself as I was thinking, if I had the power, or if I found myself in a position of power, which sector would I address first? I won't ask because I know, I know the sector you all would address, but I thought healthcare, given what I've experienced, and I thought maybe education, so that people can actually use the tech we're talking about, so that we have the right enterprises and entrepreneurs bringing relevant solutions to the problems that we face. But as I was going through this, and I said climate and energy, because then we need to be enjoying today's resources sustainably. The answer I gave myself in the morning was, I don't think you can look at any sector in isolation, right? So the Dealshare platform is testament of this. We currently are fundraising across agriculture, education, healthcare, and then energy and climate. But last but not least, I think the thematic areas we try to sort of represent, as you see with the enterprise on showcase today. We're looking at youth employment. I'm trying to stop. I'm trying to stop myself from calling it youth unemployment. We need youth employment. Gender-lens investing. Are we investing enough in the women or the ladies of our continent? And then lastly, tech, which our panel did speak to. That said, just to give highlights about the 2.0 platform that's loading, I think when you go to our website, you will see the Dealshare platform, which is literally a gateway to impactful partnerships. You'll be able to access it via our website, complete details. If you can give us a lot of details about yourselves, which will allow us to sort of tailor some of these deals and make sure they are known to you. What's more important for us as an investor network is that you are then able to invite a capital seeker or an enterprise that you endorse as a corporate to say, please, you be sort of talking to all the other social investors, giving them confidence that you have done your part as a social investor, for them to co-invest, to collaborate with you in these initiatives. And then once the capital seeker actually creates the deal and endorses and approves that they're working with you, this deal becomes live on our platform. I think with that said, I don't want to take more time from the 7 enterprises that will be on showcase today. Tibu Health, Ilara, Zana Africa, Checkups, Gene Plus, Jacaranda, you were mentioned earlier, and Zuri Health. I have spoken to the founders, and I must say, it's with great pleasure that AVPA is able to bring such, in my opinion, high-quality enterprises. And for most of these, I want to thank some of our partners. I think Ashoka for enabling that investor readiness to the level that you experience today. With that said, allow me to call upon Ilara Health to talk to you. And I've been saying to them, I'm confident we're going to get capital flowing today. I hope it was that easy, but I'm still hopeful and expectant that we'll be able to help.
Thank you so much. How do I get to my web slides? Sorry, do I have, so how do I get to my slides? Okay, so that's cool. Do I need to do anything here? Okay, is there clicker? Anyways, hi, I'm Emilian, and I'm the founder of Ilara Health. And I'm extremely passionate, if not borderline obsessed, by helping people to live healthier and longer. And this is part of my life, and it's been part of my life for the past 7-8 years, very personal reasons. Got into a number of metabolic issues because of, like many of us here, have had a long and unhealthy career, not eating well, not taking care of my life, not taking care of my sleep, etc. So this projected me into leaving my fund manager, VC role, leaving other things, and then launching what is today Ilara Health. Now I'll get you more into what we do. Is there a clicker? Okay, cool. Awesome, thank you. Awesome. I'm Emilian, but this is Diana, and I met Diana back in 2019, when I was early 2019, when I was looking at this market to understand what are the biggest issues in primary care, and if there is a way to solve those issues. And interestingly enough, Diana is not a doctor. She is a nurse, like many of the 15 or 20,000 small medical entrepreneurs who run and own small clinics in the outskirts of the Kenyan cities. And when I met Diana, actually, she really impressed me because I asked her, Diana, she runs a small clinic in the outskirts of Nairobi. It's about 15 kilometers from here. And when I asked Diana, what are the main issues that you face every single day, she told me, look, I have 20, 30 moms, pregnant moms coming every month to get a scan, but I don't have the money to buy an ultrasound. Or I have patients coming with diabetes symptoms, but I can't buy a hemoglobin A1C tester to be able to test them. So I send them away, and they may get to the public sector where they don't get care either. Or I have people with other symptoms, and I can't treat them, cardiovascular, etc. And then, interestingly enough, after I met Diana, I was touring the outskirts of Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, and met hundreds, probably 300 of those small clinics in the first year. And with no exception, everyone told me the same thing. I don't have money to buy an asset, to buy a medical device. I don't have enough patients because there are like 20 clinics in the same street and another 40 pharmacies. So kind of in my mind was like, what are the biggest issues, right? Is access to capital. Diana runs a small clinic which used to have 5 to 10 patients a day because there are another 10 clinics next door. She makes 200,000 clinics, or she was making 200,000 shillings. 70% of her revenue was through selling pharmaceuticals in a chemist inside her clinic. She doesn't have a proper financial system. She doesn't have a P&L. She was mixing her private finances, private life with a business life. So she couldn't go to the bank and say, I need $5,000 or $10,000 to upgrade my clinic. So access to capital was one of the biggest issues that those small clinics like Diana have. And this got us, myself and my co-founders later on, to the idea, is there a way to structure a flexible financing way to step into those micro clinics, let's call them micro medical SMEs, we're not building clinics, but stepping inside the clinics and offer whatever those clinicians need, medical devices, pharmaceuticals on credit, because 70% of her revenue, so 70% of the 200,000 shillings is actually to selling pharmaceuticals to the patients coming to the clinic. So offering these goods, assets, on a flexible way to those clinics, in a leasing way for the medical devices over 1 or 2 years, credit for pharmaceuticals, leasing for benches and computers and whatever they need. So that's how Ilara Health has formed. And since we started the company, we've been really expanding. We've done business to about 3,000 of those, let's call them 15,000 or so, privately owned, nurse-run or nurse-led primary or secondary care medical facilities across Kenya. So literally we've done business across Kenya, 40 or 42 counties out of 47. And interesting enough, those clinics actually serve millions of patients every year stepping through the door. I mean, most of the Kenyans, you know, if any of you lives in the outskirts, you'll see most of those people live and go and seek care in those small clinics. And we've got really lucky, actually. I mean, we've got a chance to raise funding from a number of both equity, debt financiers, and grant organizations to be able to get where we are. So we raised today about $11.5 million. We're not yet there. We still have a lot of work to do, and we have the right team to execute. Between myself and my co-founders, between myself and my co-founders, we're operators, technology people, doctors in the team. So what we're building is really close to the heart of the people that we're serving. And you know, this is how, I mean, literally, I'm not sure this is how, you know, this is outside one of the clinics that we serve. So that's exactly how primary care facility looks like, or outside looks like. Very, very different than what we see here in the bubble, Westland, Nairobi, etc. And going back to the problem, right? So 500 million people on this continent do not have access to basic care, right? Or cannot afford and don't have access to basic diagnostics, right? Because there is access and there is quality of access. For me, even if there are 15,000 small medical facilities in this country, which is way more per 1,000 people than in Europe or in North America, the problem is that, you know, you want to seek care or in a clinic like this, right? So for me, it's like how are we addressing these fragmentations, massive fragmentation of the sector, which cannot grow because all those small clinics are the same. They make the same money, 200,000 shillings, they do the same things, they don't have access to capital, they don't have access to more patients. So that's really the way, I think, the opportunity, which is solving the fragmentation by bringing quality of care in the best clinicians, so you can't help all of them. And that's how Ilara came, and so we said, like, how do we, like in a venture capital model, right? I build a deal flow of 1,000 and 1,000 of clinics, or 1,000 and 1,000 of startups. How do I choose the right entrepreneurs amongst those 1,000? How do I due diligence them? How do I invest in the best ones? And how do I top up? So that's pretty much what we're doing, right? We enter those clinics with something. So we started with diagnostic devices back in 2019, ultrasound, hematology machines, point-of-care diagnostic devices for diabetes and cardiovascular diseases, etc. So small devices that we place on a leasing model into those 1,000 of clinics. Again, 3,000 of them we've done business with. This allowed us actually to start to open a relationship with those clinicians and start to perhaps not due diligence them first, but start to work with them and understand the personality of the founder. And then we went, afterwards, about a year and a half ago, we started actually to give them pharmaceuticals on credit because, again, 70% of the revenue comes from selling medication every single day to the patients coming to see them. So pharmaceuticals has been the next step into those clinics. But again, this doesn't give us, first of all, by just giving a device on credit or by just giving some pharmaceuticals on credit, we're not making such a big difference because doesn't mean that we really change the way significantly the way the quality of care is delivered. So we're thinking, like, what's the next step? How do we choose amongst those 3,000, the best ones, to really go to the next step and train them and form them and invest more into them and brand them? And for this, we said we need to look at their numbers. We need to see their financials. We need to give them, to digitize them. 9 in 10 are pen and paper. There's something interesting, a picture that I took a couple of weeks ago in Mombasa. It's going to come, where you see a stack of papers on the desk of a clinic. So it's not here. I'm not sure what this. Anyways, so digitizing them allowed us actually to, number one, look at the numbers, being able to choose the best clinicians, but also give the clinician a tool for her to run better the clinic, to run the patients, to see her numbers at the end of the day. So that's how Ilara has shaped today into a company which provides those macro-medical SMEs with whatever they need for them to provide better care, which is their role. And we have a lot of data, which is very interesting, right? We have about 300 clinics out of the one that we power today, which have the system, and which we see the data, aggregated data sets, which allows us now to actually bring partners in the ecosystem, pharma companies, donors, grant companies, etc., to be able, based on a certain health outcomes, which we can report because we see the data. And really the end goal here is actually to identify the best clinics, step into them and invest even more, not just the device or pharmaceuticals, but do a bit infrastructure building. So what we've done lately, since about a year ago, we found the best clinics out of this deal flow, if you want, and we started to build infra and eventually put a brand on top of the clinic. We have 10 clinics now which are powered by Ilara, and this is a bit how, I'm not sure what's happening here. I think this, I'm not sure if you guys see that. Yeah, this is how the clinics were, a clinic looked before and how a clinic looks after. And we've been growing significantly since the beginning. We have a steady growth of the top line. And we generate impact, which is even closer to my heart, because we can make a difference both on the patient side, because the patients get better care, the clinician side, because now that small business makes more revenue and is trained, and the whole ecosystem side, because now we have the data that we can provide to the public sector, to the donors, to the global organizations, which data is extremely, extremely rich. And this goes back to kind of what's behind this. It's really creating a value-based care model where the care becomes cheaper, reimbursed based on outcomes, which improves the patient experience, and which streamlines completely the whole process around a very, very broken existing primary care system in this country. And the opportunity is massive. I mean, this is not just Kenya. This is the whole Africa. I mean, I've seen countries around, I think, except South Africa and North Africa. Most of what I've seen looks very similar. That's very similar in Brazil, very similar in Southeastern Asia. So it's a problem which most of the emerging markets have faced. And again, we've raised significant capital in a couple of rounds. We're not yet there. We keep raising. We're currently raising about $2 million as an extension of our last round and as a pre-Series A to get us to where we need in terms of goals, in terms of achievements, to be able to really change the way this primary care sector works in Africa with technology and with infrastructure on top of it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. My colleagues, so I just want to allow for a couple of questions whilst we still have, okay.
Thank you. My name is Irene Gadiaka from Total Impact Capital. And I have 3 short questions.
Sure.
What's your strategy for footprint in Africa? Because if someone is already here as an investor, they would be looking to map out their yeah. So you mentioned that. And then it seems that there could be synergies between yourselves and other similar institutions like medical credit funds. Sure. Is there any link to say we can partner so that, first of all, we de-risk to the extent that we can partner? So yeah, you get it. And 3, what are you doing in duplication of offering services? It already started with what you mentioned, that you have, my duplication kind of headache is, somebody said in Kenol there are 500 salons, over 10,000 population, and it seems here it's the same. Your neighbor starts a pharmaceutical shop and you do the exact same. Is there a way to look at consolidating that so that, yeah, so you get it.
Absolutely. So I'll start with the last one. It's really what we do. We consolidate.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, what's happening here when we step into one of those clinics and we start to give them an ultrasound, then a hematology machine, then pharmaceuticals, then we build some walls, then we put a painting and we do some marketing for them, they become better. They will attract more patients because they will get patients who are going to buy pharmaceuticals somewhere else and do diagnostics somewhere else, which is great. But also doesn't mean that everyone else is going to die, all the other businesses is going to disappear, will disappear, which is actually good for the market because finally only 20% of the people in this country have work in the formal economy, right? So the reality is that if the Mama Boga who sells bananas next door is going to now build a supermarket, doesn't mean that all the other Mama Bogas will disappear. Everyone does business, right? So yes, we do consolidation. I think consolidation is the secret of quality. But does it also mean that we destroy the rest of the market? I think the second question, so the first question, which is the vision for Africa. Look, I think it's any entrepreneur, we always think like, what's next? What's the next market? what do I go next? The reality, there is so much to do here. And you know, I've been fighting with myself, thinking, do we go to the next market immediately? And we've been around for 4.5 years. Or do we still learn in Kenya? I think there is so much to learn here. Because we're really building a brick-by-brick ecosystem. We've started with diagnostics, pharmaceuticals, technology. Now we're building an insurance model, an employer, an employee, low-income employee, wellness and subscription model in our clinics. There's so much to do. I think when we are comfortable that this works, then we can take the model and export it into another market, which is similar to Kenya. Otherwise, any distraction takes a toll on the management team and on the funding, and et cetera. And sorry, your second question was? Sorry? Yeah. 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 So look, I mean, I really believe into this kind of this technology-enabled infrastructure, right? There is way too much infrastructure, and in the earlier panel, we're talking about, are we building more infrastructure, or are we using the existing broken infrastructure, identify the best out of it, and upgrade it, right? If I go and build another clinic next door, we're going to end up with 15,000 and another 100 clinics, right? There are already way too many clinics in this country. So, yeah. Yeah, so cooperation, I mean, obviously, when I look at the partners we work with the likes of Gates, right? Gates said, I want to solve maternal care during COVID when moms were not going to hospitals anymore, so got a grant. We work with pharma companies. I'm AstraZeneca, I want to distribute a certain medication sponsored by the government in a certain area. We have the data, we know where the asthma patients are. Or I want to do, et cetera, et cetera. So we partner with manufacturers, with global health organizations, with other clinics, with et cetera. So it's an ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you. So I was going to take one more question, but I'm worried that we might not be able to go through the 7. What I can confirm is that all the enterprises on show today are going to have a stand in the networking section where we can actually interact with them and ask more questions. So in the interest of time, I'll only take one question, especially for those that are online, per enterprise. Thank you so much. Let me call upon the next enterprise at Tibu Health. Tibu, they're leveraging technology to make world-class health services across digital and physical ecosystems. Jay, thank you.
Got it. I was the guy that said earlier on I don't like pitching. Hi, and thank you for welcoming me, AVPA. I don't know where you are. My name is Jason. I'm one of the founders at Tibu Health. It was actually kind of cool walking in here because we've been building a lot for the last 4 years, and there was a few people that was like, hey, I know you, I use your services, it's great. So it's nice to kind of like, pop out of the trenches and then see that people are actually paying attention. Anyway, so we deliver healthcare where you live, work, and click. So basically, if we look at the problem in Africa in health, there's a number of them, but can everybody hear me? No?
Jason, let's switch your mic.
And if I'm going to, that's much better, yeah. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of problems. I would say that we focus a lot on the patient experience and care coordination. And that includes like wait times, but there's an access problem. And so now we're starting to build out a network, like a distribution network for healthcare. And we do this by, oh, that's the market opportunity. We can skip that. So we do that by combining physical and digital aspects of healthcare and bringing them together. So what we've built is we have a core that's digital. We have a virtual care team that helps with care coordination, triage, follow-up for chronic patients. Think of a little bit like the Antara model, right? But we own that in-house. And then it's supported by some physical infrastructure. We used to be a digital-only company, and then we learned that it doesn't scale as well as we had hoped, so we incorporated a physical aspect to our businesses. And in our physical spaces, we use AI-powered instrumentation to assist physicians. And so you have a core that's virtual, and then you have a few flagship sites that have more sophisticated capabilities. And then we recently partnered with Good Life Pharmacies to offer Minute Clinic. We established Minute Clinic services in all of the Good Life pharmacies. So a little bit like the CVS model in the States. I don't know if everybody knows CVS pharmacies. They have Minute Clinics. So yeah, so we have if there's a patient in a Minute Clinic that needs more sophisticated care, they go to the nearest flagship. And so we only build like a couple of these flagships because we don't want to just become the next Aga Khan hospital and just drop clinics everywhere. So does that make sense? I'll go to the next one. If it doesn't make sense, you guys can ask questions after. So we built out digital and physical infrastructure over the last couple of years. And on the digital side, we have our own EHR, we have our own laboratory information system, we have patient scheduling platform, we have a logistics platform, we have a CDMP and wellness platform that ties into our virtual care team, right? Because follow-up and managed care is important for people with chronics. We have patient portals, so if you want to order a service, schedule a service, you can do it on iOS, Android, and on the web. And we have a practitioner app for our practitioners. So that's the digital infrastructure that we've built, and it powers our physical clinics and the Minute Clinics, right? So right now we have 2 flagships. This is a bit of a lie. We don't have 3, we got 2. We want to build another one in Westlands. We built our own ISO level laboratory, and the reason we did that is because our margins increase incredibly. We were outsourcing lab for the longest time, and there were quality issues. And our margins were like 20%. Now some of our margins are like 80%. So it's, you just got to feed the lab. And we have 2 sample collection sites. So that's our infrastructure. And the distribution side of things, so we have our 2 flagship clinics, of course. We have 134 partner pharmacies. So we recently signed an exclusive deal with Good Life Pharmacies. Good Life is like our sister company, so to speak. We have the same common investor. But the idea there is the Minute Clinic model. We have 22 now insurance contracts. So people walk in, they swipe their card, thumbprint, whatever it is, and boom. We have 107 specialized clinic clients. So we work a lot with the specialists that don't have, it's a hole in the wall, and they don't have diagnostics, they can't do minor procedures, et cetera. So they'll refer them to us. So we have 107 of those partnerships, and we have 156 corporates that we work with annually for things like occupational wellness, things like that. Now we're getting into the weeds. Hold on. Okay, so benefits of digital. I won't spend too much time on this. After you guys can download the deck, there's a QR code. But basically, digital benefits, it's communication, scheduling, care coordination, and make things a lot more efficient, right? Physical benefits in Africa. Remember I said we started with digital only? It's tough, right? Because if you want to get onboarded by an insurance company and you're digital only, no. Right? And also legitimacy, right? People like to see there's, you guys exist, you're not quacks. And then obviously the AI instrumentation that we use in all of our sites, it assists physicians with diagnoses, screening, et cetera. So it just puts the physician on steroids, for lack of a better word. Yeah. So patients, I heard today patients love it, which is great. There's a couple of you that have used our services in our clinics, which thank you. We'll keep going. Okay, so how we make money. So we have our flagship clinics, we have Minute Clinics, we have our in-house lab service, and we just launched corporate memberships. And each of these will do different things, right? So our flagship clinics are the most sophisticated of clinics, and they act as a referral point. Our Minute Clinics are, they're Minute Clinics, so like your first point of care, just rapid screening, in and out, super cheap. Consultations there are free through our Good Life partnership. We make money off lab. So our lab is really what is more and more sophisticated. I would say our nearest competitor for lab in terms of quality is probably Lancet at this point. We use European instrumentation, and we got direct deals with these guys that make the instruments. And then corporate memberships. So for corporate memberships, we target corporates that in the agro, mining, manufacturing that have large workforces, even small companies actually like restaurants where they can't afford to pay $1,000 per person for private insurance. We do kind of what Avenue Healthcare did, which is But it's a great product. They built a great product, and I just want to make it better. But basically, is we risk pool it, and it's minimum of 8 people can join our corporate membership product, and I think it's here. So basically, we have 3 tiers. So it's one annual fee of 13,500 shillings, and then you get to see your doctor whenever you want. Right? You get lab service, our lab service, whenever you want, as much as not as much as you want. We have to manage the care or else we lose money. Specialized clinics, imaging, and then you get a bunch of discounts off of your pharma through our Good Life partnership. So this is like the first tier is what a lot of people have started going for. We only released it like a week and a half ago, and we have about 100 members because it's cheap, right? And I risk pool, and it makes sense. The key is that if there's 10 employees, you don't want to get 8 that are really sick, right? Because then it breaks. And the comprehensive one is for people with chronics. So we're starting with 4 chronic conditions. And then concierge is for some of our high net worth clients that want something at home, want something a little bit more bespoke. There's a market for that. Okay. Yeah, traction today. So we've done about 45,000 diagnostic investigations. Anyway, you guys can read that. The why us was a little bit about the distribution, but what's really cool is the Good Life deal that we just signed, right? So this is a super asset light way of distributing healthcare services and going down the pyramid, right? So traditionally we were catering to middle upper income populations. But now with these minute clinics, there's 134 Good Life pharmacies in this country. And so, we don't pay for the fit out, we don't pay rent, we don't pay electricity. We're in charge of the clinical service delivery in those sites. And so now we're able, like our first one's going online on Monday. It's not in Karen, it's in Kahawa, right? And so we start to be able to address certain populations that we couldn't previously address. And so we're fundraising now to be able to fuel that, to set up minute clinics and Good Life pharmacies all over the place. So this is us. So we're a team of 65 now across our multiple sites. I'm a former UN kid, spent 5 years with WHO on the emergencies team. Peter is an engineer by trade. He was recognized by Google and Twitter as one of Africa's best engineers, not hackers. We have Dr. Lema. She runs Med. She's our CMO. And the next one's an org chart. That's kind of boring. You guys can look at that after. Diversity. So we're pretty much a women-led organization. So 70% of our staff is 67 or 70, but something like that is are women, and I don't know. It works great. We have a great team. So we're raising 1.3. Honestly, so there's people that are going to ask us about like revenue and deal terms. I think if you guys are interested in that, I'm happy to have a one-on-one chat. So just get in touch with me and we can get into the weeds a little bit. But basically our goal with the memberships and the Good Life distribution is profitability by the end of the year. I love you VCs. You guys are great. We wouldn't be here without you. But it'd be nice to be, there's a but. There's a but. not a bad but. It's just, we'd like to profitable by the end of the year. So we need about $1.5 million to become profitable. We have about 750 left of that million and a bit. And we're Good Life memberships, put more AI instrumentation in our clinics by the end of the year. And I think that's it. Sorry for it's not it. This is how we're going to use your money. So we want, remember I said we have 3 flagships, then we want to put one up in Westlands. Good Life Pharmacies is what we're going to use the money for. We're going to obviously build out our tech. Our tech team is pretty slim right now. We're 5 engineers. What they're able to do with just 5 people is amazing. Do a couple of key hires, spend a little bit marketing, and the monthly operations. If you want the deck, you can download it and get into the weeds. There's a lot of text, so I didn't want to bore you with that, but feel free.
Thank you. So all the pitch decks will be available, especially I see people taking a lot of photos, and to me that just shows interest. We'll take one question.
Only one, make it good, make it count. Because you're not getting 2.
Oh, we have enterprise asking a fellow entrepreneur.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one. I know it's going to be a tough one.
I mean, great picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Building new infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah. Like building versus partnering and working on with somebody. Yeah.
Are there too many clinics in this country?
Yeah. So I feel like I want to sit for this one. So we've been down that route, right? We went down that route with diagnostics, with lab, and there's some real quality questions here. I'm sorry. Like there's some really serious quality questions, and we couldn't scale and couldn't work with the people that we wanted to work with by outsourcing. We didn't control quality, we didn't control logistics, and so we said we have to bring it in-house for those reasons, but also the question around margins, right? Like running your own lab, I mean, hospitals live and die off of lab and pharma, right? Like I don't care about consultation, I'll give it to you for free. And so for us, even the virtual bit, like some people have told us, well, why don't you outsource the virtual stuff? Because you're essentially doing what Antara does. Well, we started there, we already had it, right? And so, and again, we were able to Tibu-fy it by owning it in-house. And it's not terribly expensive either. So it's almost like an ecosystem that we have. And I know a lot of people don't like brick and mortar in this room. Well, maybe, I don't know. But for us, what we've learned is virtual only. There's challenges with that. And so we wanted to combine the two. You know, we think it scales better in Africa. Yeah.
Awesome. I want to encourage us to continue these conversations. I think they're very, very meaningful, and they will assist most of the investors in the room to make better decisions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I'd like to call upon Megan from Zana Africa. Megan.
And then I have to scroll through. Hi, everybody. How's the energy level today? I'm going to take you guys on a bit of a different journey. We got to get my slides up. Are they up? Okay. If anybody needs to like just stretch, feel welcome to. Great. Well, I'm Megan McCurry. I'm a 23-year resident of Kenya. And I'm really proud to share with you today how we are solving for gender and health equality through retail markets, starting with sanitary pads. And I'll be inviting some of you all to see if you can join us to close our current round to reach 1.3 million customers in the next 3 years, and join Vital Foundation, who's our anchor investor. So we are changing health outcomes one pad at a time. I founded Zana Africa to help girls and women know, access, and actualize their full health rights, starting with the right to menstrual health and starting with sanitary pads. Girls have a lot of questions, and I don't know if you guys remember adolescence. You might not want to. There are so many questions, and there are so few answers sometimes, and it's a time of incredible awkwardness, but also vulnerability. These are real questions from girls. The biggest vulnerability stems from 4 in 5 girls across East Africa lacking access to sanitary pads or other menstrual products and related health education. This might seem innocuous, but it actually has cascading lifetime consequences that cause generational harm and poverty. It starts with girls having an inability to understand consent, to be preyed upon, and to really derail their educational outcomes. It extends to pregnancies for girls and women being unplanned. Women have no control over when they want to start their family, how many children they want, and that results in a lot of compromised long-term economic outcomes. And even for women who are employed, up to 23% of missed unemployment is due to menstruation. So this has cascading consequences that are really unseen by most of us here in this room, even though we're in healthcare, and the consequences run into the billions in GDP. This is also a really big market. It's $48 billion globally. In Kenya, by 2028, if we secured $10.5 million in revenue, that would only be 8% of the future market. The number of menstruators rising onto this continent in the next 5 years is equal to 2/3 of the US or 1/2 of the European Union population. That is an enormous market who needs this product 13 times a year for 40 years, even if they don't want it. They need it. And so this Africa Rising opportunity is a huge opportunity to secure a lifetime relationship with these customers. How we do this is pads are a gateway into health outcomes. So we deliver affordable, quality sanitary pads available at your local kiosk where you buy on credit, with accessible, engaging health education on and alongside our sanitary pad packages, and referrals to a network of healthcare providers. So I'm going to give you a little unveiling. Just this morning, we started manufacturing locally in Kenya, finally. We have our, thank you, it's epic. We have our hotline and chat bot, which I'll tell you about more in just a second, on all sanitary pad packages, on all posters, and now, nobody's seen this in the whole wide world except you guys now, on the back of every pad itself. So as a woman is sitting down, it's a little bit light. I'll pass it around because you guys are like, and I love that people get to just interact with pads. As you're literally putting on your pad, you can be reminded that NIA healthcare professionals are here for you to answer any of your questions on health and safety. So we started this with Boehringer Ingelheim. I'm really proud of the partnership with them. And this is now going live from next week when the production cycle is finished. So it's nice to have a pretty face, but it's even better to have a product that's proven. So I want to say why we win. I'm going to run you through each of these slides very briefly. We have unparalleled quality, and this is because we sent young high school graduates to markets all over the country to ask women and girls at school, what do you want? So what they need to do is get up in the morning, walk a long distance to school or to work, not be able to safely change their pad and walk back. And it needs to not burn, it needs to not chafe, it needs to not leak, it needs to not smell. There's some basic functionalities that current products do not deliver. 95% of products out there burn and chafe and women don't talk about it. Procter & Gamble lost 40% market share when people started talking about it permanently. But that high quality has to be low cost. And that's a value proposition that multinationals don't want, right? If you see on the left there, we meet a really key missing middle of value for money. And on the right, you see how multinationals' market share is tanking, which gives an awesome opportunity right now to really step into that gap. And please note that only 35% of Kenyan women regularly use pads. So the market that's not there is even bigger than the market that is there. Point of first use, a couple years ago, we spun out a nonprofit on the basis of an amazing randomized control trial that changed health outcomes and gender equality for boys and girls. And that is now being scaled into the Kenyan government curriculum with KICD. You don't need to know that acronym, but it's getting scaled. And so by 2026, every single Kenyan youth will go through a NIA-branded curriculum. So we will be in their hearts and minds from the beginning and avoiding a lot of those problems that you just saw. Additionally, institutional clients are about 42% of our sales, and 2 years ago, they sold over 72,000 girls, or gave over 72,000 girls sanitary pads who are in families who cannot afford at any price. Galani's, if you guys know Galani's, they're the flagship supermarket for Kenya. They've got 42 tills. They're really the anchor for the pulse of what's happening in Kenya. In just about 18 or 20 months, we secured 8% market share from zero. So it really shows you what's possible. And we're now scaling with all of them. They're now satellite distribution hubs across the country. Our customer service is this health concierge, that hotline plus the chatbot. Everything for us is dignity through choice. What kind of product do you want? How do you want to get health information? So we can answer questions confidentially. It's a free call, or the chatbot is a WhatsApp. And we can speak in your local language as long as you want. Answer your questions, make prompts to encourage health-seeking behavior. When we've done that, you can see these targeted outcomes. We've saved lives. And we've partnered with other NGOs, other health providers who have done the cervical cancer screening, who have done all of that. But the healthcare system really has a marketing problem, and we solve that for them. We're also an incredibly trusted brand. You can see a lot of these brick and mortar as well as digital distribution partners. If you fund any of those e-commerce, please fund us. People love it, and it stands on their own. We closed out 2023 strong. I think for everybody, COVID was a nightmare, but we survived. We've had 2.6x growth last year and 3.9x the year prior. 65 million shillings in turnover last year with 27% gross margins, and we touched almost 500,000 lives across 10,000 points of sale and with 72 institutional customers. For those who like graphs, we're growing. Next year is 2x, and the real basis of that is scaling with our current partners with joint business plans that are signed with them. We have 118,000 in USD in secured partnerships with just 2 institutions already, which represents 28% of our sales last year. And we have a particular partner that's buying in advance diapers for about $40,000 a month, baby diapers. So we really see that we could meet or exceed this next year. If you like charts instead, tables, those are to dates. You can see next year, this coming year, we'll start to actually exceed all of our historical to date numbers, which is very exciting. We're on a very steep growth path. What I've added here are also the health engagements. Last year was just 2 months of kind of piloting. We launched with the governor of Homa Bay. The government loves us because we're helping solve a problem that they've identified. And we're going to have exponential growth. So I'm excited to talk to some of the other entrepreneurs here about how we can direct to them as well. We are women-owned and led. By the end of this year, I should be a Kenyan citizen, so we should soon be 100% Kenyan-owned. And we've got a great, diverse team to really deliver on the promises to the communities that we've pledged. We have amazing funding partners. These are only our business funders. Our nonprofit has separate funders if you're interested in kind of the curriculum. And the opportunity, I'd like to invite you to join us. The investment kind of the way in which investment deals are done is highly broken. We have been trying to fundraise for quite a while, but because we're not in the bullseye of what people are looking for, we often don't make it to the investment committees. So I'd like to invite some of you all who are in funds, can we change that? This is an amazing opportunity to invest in systems change. We have VTOL Foundation already deployed 300,000. If we can close this year, we're well on our way to achieve our goals. That will allow us to open a Series A investment in our own intellectual property to manufacture. You can ask me about that later. And really, we're poised within 20 years. I'm not going to sleep well until I reach 100 million African women across the continent with 4 or 5 manufacturing facilities because we don't have time to wait. Women are going to lead the future, and this is how they're going to do it. So please join me. And asanteni sana. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll take one question. Someone raised their hands really quick.
Sorry, mine is not actually a question, but rather a comment. I'm one of your customers. I have been for the last 4 years. I've actually just seen you posted one of my reviews on Twitter.
Oh, yes. Fabulous.
Yeah, and I'm just here to attest to the quality of their products. I haven't found anything better in the market over the last 4 years, including abroad, not just in Kenya. And especially for that price point, it's very good quality. And if I had the money personally, I would 100% invest.
You see how word of mouth is really important? I couldn't have scripted that better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. As a girl dad, to see the pet go around, I'm learning, and I would also invest. Thank you so much. In the interest of time,
thanks.
I'm going to call upon Zuri Health. And please, interact with our enterprises in the networking session. Was there someone with a burning question? Maybe I was a bit unfair. And anyone with a question, they... Okay, so I'm told if the product quality is... Okay, over to you.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Ikechukwu Arthur Anoke, founder and CEO at Zuri Health. And at Zuri Health, we're democratizing access for healthcare in Africa. Less than 50% of Africans have access to affordable, basic healthcare. And let's look at the numbers. The doctor-to-patient ratio, 1 doctor to 10,000 people. 65% of mobile phone users on the continent have access to the internet or data, while we have a 2% insurance penetration rate. But Africa bears the highest disease burden. Our mission at Zuri Health is to provide the best universal healthcare experience on demand. And we've done that by building a a virtual platform, on a hybrid platform. On one hand, a virtual hospital that allows you to start and end your healthcare journey using an app, a chatbot, and web. But also, as we've discussed here earlier on, for 65% of mobile phone users who don't have access to the internet or data, an SMS platform that allows you start and end your healthcare journey on your smartphone and on your basic phone. And let's look at the numbers. Kenya has a mobile penetration rate of 109%. Every household in Kenya has a mobile phone. And for us at Zuri Health, we want to put a hospital in every mobile phone. And when we're looking at addressing the healthcare market, we'll say that the digital patient market is about $500 million. And let's look at 672 million underserved people. And we say that when we're looking at the 6% CAGR growth rate, the African digital healthcare market is worth $2.4 billion. But let's go into our MVPs. What exactly do we do? Now, when you look at it, we have the cheapest telemedicine consultation anywhere in the world. For less than 10 US cents, people are able to chat with a doctor and get first-level medical consultation. This is cheaper than the cost of transportation from your house to the nearest healthcare center. We have an AI-powered chatbot, Vera, that allows you, if you look at my back, as this, you can scan. It is a hospital on the cloud, where you're able to buy your medication, book a lab test, chat with a doctor, including AI-powered face recognition test that allows you to check your HbA1c and stress level. And when you look at the cost in the market for about $40 to do your HbA1c, we're going to retail that for $1.20. And our enablers are Care Now, Pay Later, Health 360, Zuri Care, and educational awareness. Now, like talked about leveraging artificial intelligence for screening, we've built something for diabetes, mental health, and STD. Our business model, how do we make money? On the chatbot on WhatsApp, for $1, you can chat with a doctor and have a physical consultation. This is incredible and is removing access to barriers, access to health. SMS billing for 10 US cents. We get between 7 to 15% commission on pharmacies and labs. And we have a doctor concierge service, which is doctor at home service, where people pay $30 for having a doctor see you at home. We also built Zuri Care, which is digital outpatient service that is built for companies without insurance for their colleagues. So we're looking at thousands of SMEs without insurance, providing them a virtual embedded hospital in their clinics, and also building our Care Now, Pay Later, which I'll talk about later. Our competitive advantage, Zuri Health is built an end-to-end healthcare patient journey, because the idea is how many apps or solutions do you want to have to be able to address your healthcare needs? In addition, we're the fastest growing healthcare company in the continent. We just launched Cameroon 2 days ago. In 2 years, we're in 8 markets, and we're going. High impact, we take care of about 65% of mobile phone users who live in underserved communities who don't have access to smartphones. Strong telco partnerships. We hacked distribution. That's what we like to say at Zuri Health. We've partnered with telcos. We signed a group framework agreement with MTN Group, giving us access to 180 million subscribers in 21 countries, making us probably the biggest health tech company in impact and numbers. Adaptability. When you build a scaled-out platform like we've built at Zuri Health, you de-risk your business. For example, in Francophone Africa, you're unable to do an e-pharmacy services. Why? Because of the law that says a pharmacy should not be able to serve other than a particular location. But when you de-risk your business, you build multiple verticals. One, you build stickiness, and most importantly, because we suffer from a regime of either under-regulation or over-regulation, you build a sustainable business that can withstand that. Multilingual and multi-channel. Progress and impact. We've seen in our 2-3 years over 1 million users. We're in 9 African markets now, 100+ jobs created. And let's talk about our impact goals. Zuri Health last year closed a groundbreaking deal with Bayer to reach 100 million women on contraceptives, building out. Zuri Health is building Care Now, Pay Later with Safaricom, and with that, we are creating healthcare lending on insurance. And our goal with Safaricom is to reach 5 million people, providing them access to insurance with excellent funding. And also, we're building out similar thing with MTN Group, starting with MTN Zambia, providing access to local insurance. So we are partnered with M-Pesa Foundation in a groundbreaking medical health camp. And we're going to target 47 constituents for 7 regions. The idea is to provide access to affordable, accessible healthcare, but also the continuity of care. And with our partnership with M-Pesa Foundation, we have reached over 30,000 people, and we're going on the second stage of this. And the idea is that we not just meet people at a point of view, but provide a continuity of care. And in building that, we talked about data, access to data. Zuri Health is doing something with that data. In all those constituencies, we are mapping out issues around healthcare, and that it's getting back into policy because we're working with the government as well to share. This is our feedback on what's happening here. Continuous care program. Our involvement in the health camps and part of our outreach, we're building out a transformative continuous care program, which we are co-creating with Boehringer Ingelheim. The idea is to be able to build a solution that allows people who have chronic conditions manage access to their symptoms, provide them with affordable medication, because the challenge is a lot of the big pharmas want to support. They want to give you access to affordable medication at what they call access market rate. But that subsidy doesn't pass on to the users, because the retailers will sell, because there's a demand, they will sell at price. But because we have data, because we know where they are, because we know how to reach them, we are able to provide such services and follow-on care as well. Zuri Health, we have my two co-founders, Dizzy Siaho and Titi Olaolu Hassan. Why will this team make it work? Because healthcare is personal to us. My co-founders and I share over 15 years experience. We understand over 15 years experience, and we understand Africa. I've done business across all sectors of the continent, and we've built extensive relationships across the board. Zuri Health broke even last year. Happy to announce that last year we broke even 2 years. In our first year market, we did 3x our revenue in GMV. Last year we did $1.8 million in GMV revenue. And we're looking forward to growing this year. Zuri Health is raising $4 million to be able to catalyze our growth. We're backed by Founders Factory, DOB Equity, Vilgro, 535 Ventures Fund, and we receive grants from Google, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Bayer, and DEG Impulse. And our growth plan is very simple. By 2026, we want to reach $11.3 million in revenue. We've broken down into simple, achievable plans, as you can look at. We are Africa's most awarded health tech company and recognized with 52 awards and counting in 3 years. And I want to ask you to join us as we democratize access to healthcare in Africa. And before I say that, I'd like to do something. I'd like all of us to please rise, please. Healthcare is a fundamental human right. Everybody needs access to affordable, accessible healthcare. And today I want to appeal to all the VCs here. Fund every health tech company. Fund Ilara Health, fund Tibu Health, fund Zana Africa, fund us, because fund Checkups, because all the healthcare companies here are not enough to fix the healthcare in Africa. And so today we're going to make a pledge to support healthcare. And we're going to say, together we can, right? 3 times. Together we can, together we can, together we can. Asante Sana, thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I just downloaded the app so that I can ask questions. I'll take one question, quick question. Anyone? Yes.
And I should know the answer to this because from Vilgro. But are you completely digital, or do you have brick and mortar?
I think we have some brick and mortar, and in some countries it's a requirement to have a telemedicine license. So in Kenya it's a requirement, and that's why we have a brick and mortar clinic. In Zambia as well is a requirement, and we're also looking at building out mobility clinics, which is taking healthcare into like a mobile hospital into underserved communities. Happy to announce that we're bringing an ultra-modern healthcare clinic with full sustainable hybrid hospital on wheels with a dental clinic, x-ray suite, lab, etc., and operating theater. And we have also partnered with multiple countries like Zambia to work on their healthcare system and launch it out in partnership with the government of Zambia, also with the government of Nigeria as well, to take in every local government, essentially a melting point of digital and physical.
Thank you so much. Okay. One.
Thank you. And I don't even need an answer right now. I'm just thinking, we have seen, except for the pods, we have seen very similar pitches. And as an investor, then you ask yourself, what is your unique selling point? My fear is that as we advance, the only differentiator will be the price points. Can we talk about that later? I hope to catch some of you, and you can tell me how you get from, being the one that stands out, because the price point can't be the only differentiator. There's a lot of similarities already in what we've seen. Thank you.
I want to allow you to respond, but I was going to leave this for our networking session. I think we're primed for a very good networking session right after this. Thank you. I'm also encouraging everyone to join. Next up, Gene Plus.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all of you. I think, as you can read from the boards, doesn't look like healthcare per se, from a standpoint from the kind of technicalities that you guys have been hearing from everyone. But I want to take you through a journey of the clients of the healthcare, the people that come to you each and every day seeking for medication. And the perspective of our healthcare component is that we are building health through nutrition. And how do we do that? We are supporting communities in rural Africa to be able to afford a livelihood. And livelihood will be beyond healthcare. It will be healthcare, education for their kids, building a nice house, and everything else that comes with. My name is Chris Ilali. I'm the founder of Gene Plus. This company was launched in 2017, mainly with a focus in agricultural biotechnology, with a focus in animal genetics and husbandry, where we are leveraging mobile technology to provide last mile service to rural population, and we do this through a well-built and robust cold chain network. I'll give you a background to all this. The lady you see on the screens is a mother to many of us. Many of us who've grown in rural Africa, or the many people that you see in Africa, have a mother like that, whose every daily support or expectation is that cup of milk. And when we talk about this, we are talking about a population that is over 70% of African population. And this is one thing that is very key for all of you to know, that while Africa is known to be synonymous with poverty, this is actually the precursor of this poverty. And how do we help these people to come out of this poverty? These people are keeping these animals, not knowing what the problem is. But the animals are made of poor genetics, they can't produce more. These animals also face a lot of challenges in disease incidences, and also in the face of changing climate. Each and every one of us is aware of that. So this has actually led to perpetual poverty in these communities. And we are obliged to come up with something to help these people come out of poverty. I have been a part of this kind of community because I've lived in the rural Africa with my grandmother. So the problem has been, from our analysis, the problem has been a very long and convoluted supply chain network that kind of limits access of technologies to these communities. And there's also high cost of inputs because of loading up of margins along the chain. Can you imagine if you have more than 5 players on one product, moving from a manufacturer all the way to the end user? Also, there is a big gap about farmer awareness. These people are not aware of what's existing out there. And therefore, like case in point being Kenya, we only have about 28% penetration of technology. So that gives you the answer why Africa is actually known to be poor. And we have a solution for this. We have designed a very easy and simple model of service delivery, targeting the last mile. And through this, we knew that challenges of access are anchored about cold chain. We have developed a very robust cold chain, end to end. And this covers all parts of Kenya. We also have designed a very simple way of making farmers access this service. And what we have done is communities having phones. But most of these phones in rural areas are feature phones. So you need a technology that can work with a feature phone. We designed a USSD module to be an avenue for access to these services. So just by dialing the USSD code, we get a PIN that a certain farmer X is in need of these services, and we can send or dispatch a technician to go and serve that farmer. Through shortening the chain, we are able to increase adoption and penetration because we have now decentralized these services. You don't have to call a nearest person in the market or depend on a contact that you've been given. You can actually just dial it. You're in Kueni, you're in Mombasa, you're everywhere. We can actually access you. But this also reduces the cost of these services. For those that are actually locked out of affordability bracket, therefore this opens that up as well. $2 billion. But we think we can obtain about $1.2 billion in the next 5 years. Our model is simple. We have international partners that we work with on exclusive terms. We package all this together and supply this through different shops and vets, cooperatives, and other opportunities. We're also working with hospitals very closely because I know quite a number of hospitals are also using liquid nitrogen, and we are the go-to on that part. Our margins are good. And competitively, we're also doing very well because we are both affordable, we have high quality, but we also provide in the last mile, one of the kind. No other person is doing that across Africa. Our journey has been really good. We've been onboarding partnerships along every other year. We've been profitable for the past 3 years. Our growth has been tremendous, quite hockey stick kind. And you can see that we still think that we'll be able to even hit $1 million by 2027. Impact so far, we've been able to reach about 220,000 farmers, contributing approximately about an additional 500 million liters of milk and affecting about 1.3 million households. This is my team, myself and team, made of the finance, a genomic scientist, and a breeding specialist. I'm also backed by an advisory board, just all Kenyan, an agricultural economist, an advocate, lawyer, a business strategist, and a supply chain expert. Our phases of growth is basically using this to scale. How can we be able to get the 72% of Kenyans? And how can we use this in Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and other countries across Africa? We are looking at ways of scaling this across the countries and also building a robust production of cold chain to support this. Funding ask, we've so far raised about $1.4 million over the period of time in 3 years, but we are now looking at $2 million to be able to revamp our equipment support for the cold chain and continue building the product on the last mile, as well as working capital. Because, and this is very critical, that while you work with rural farmers, there's no way you can run away from a fact that you have to design a model of financial inclusion, because these people do not have money. So you need to find ways of providing a solution that would attract them to pay over time, and that's why we need such kind of an allowance. Our projected post-investment impact, as we look forward in the next 5 years, we want to at least increase household incomes by $1,700 and at least reach 400,000 households. On top of this, I remember I told you about a 40% cost reduction. We're also going to deliberately focus on making savings cumulatively $40 million a year for those farmers that are on board. Social impact, cumulative value of 122 million. Why now? For us, we think it's critical that for all of us to grow, I know some business target different people, but for us to grow, we need to look at these poor. These poor are affected by climate change big time. So climate change is a call for efficiency for everyone. And we have to help these people grow that resilience and grow that efficiency. Population growth is no brainer. Every one of us, from morning to now, all of us have taken 2 or 3 meals so far, all coming from farms, from these poor people, these poor folks. We need to help them be able to produce for us as we grow the population. Innovation, we're also tapping into innovations. We're in a very good space where quite a lot of innovations are in the market, and we can actually tap on them and be able to produce some very good solution for the market. I want to call upon you to join me in transforming the life of this farmer. At least let them, next time they go back to that udder, go with a bigger bucket, like that guy there, or even use a machine to milk. And that will actually be a true economic transformation. I'll give you more clients for those people who have hostels and those that are investing heavily in places where you need more clients. Thank you, and that's my presentation.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. There is a hand up. Someone really wants to ask you a question.
Sorry, maybe I zoomed out at some point, but I'm not sure what exactly you do. I had cold chain, I had nitrogen. Are you providing vaccinations to animals? Are you providing the semen for the animals? I didn't get that part. And maybe it was just me, and I could have zoomed out, but perhaps that needs to come out very clearly. After you show the lady, I like that because we can connect with that. What are you selling?
Okay. I think is one question, yeah. Yeah, we provide both a breeding material and vaccination to the last mile. And we're providing as a service through technicians that we are using an Uber kind of model, but instead of using an application, we're using a USSD module for ordering and delivery. Yes, that's true. So the point is why cold chain is very important is that cold chain in Kenya has been a forte of government. So it was only government who was actually supporting cold chain distribution. We are the only private company that have actually invested in cold chain distribution. It covers all, both even human beings. We are even supplying hostels. Quite a number of those that you go to might be sourcing from us. And I think for those of you that are medics, I also have the same background. There's cryopreservation for samples, but there's also surgeries. They're also using IVFs and such. So we also still supplying the same. But the cold chain is primary, because why we have 28% of adoption is because government supply chain has followed the highways of Kenya and kind of marginalized all the depths of Kenya. And that's what we are trying to do. The last mile model, for us to be able to do that, then we have to ensure that the cold chain is penetrating. But it's not, the cold chain is a support function. Yes.
Thank you, thank you. So to all entrepreneurs, I think the networking section is ready. Please set up your desks so that these conversations can continue. But thank you so much. Let me call upon our second last entrepreneur, Jacaranda Maternity.
Hi everyone, I've been told, can everybody hear me, to keep this under 7 minutes, so I'm going to be very quick. I'm Savan Shah. I represent and serve Jacaranda Maternity, a for-profit social enterprise that is dedicated towards lowering the rate of neonatal and maternal mortality in East Africa. And we have a chain of 3 hospitals, soon to be 5, serving peri-urban women and children in the country. So probably news to very few of you, 20 women in Kenya and 90 newborn children die every single day in Kenya. This is 50 times worse than in places like Germany. And to boot, this is very much a case of the representation of the whole of East Africa. The nation and the region is firmly going to be not hitting the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030, which is, guess what, 6 years away. The loss of a child and a life is bad enough, but it merely scratches the surface of what we see. This is the loss of a fellow family breadwinner, the additional costs of burial, as well as the emotional and financial strains of returning somebody back to work. The even sadder part of it is that these childbirth complications could have been avoided entirely. 80% of women in Kenya deliver in licensed healthcare facilities. Yes, 80%. So why is it that the rates that I've just spoken about continue to trend as poorly as they have? There's two main reasons for it. It's far more intricate than that. But the two main reasons are the public health sector is broken and overstrained. There are far too many pieces of equipment breaking down. There is lack of skills that's being updated and staff shortages. And then you have the private sector, which in itself is okay, but is priced out of the reach of 99% of the population. Deliveries range between $1,300 to $3,000 for a child to be born into this world. And even here, it feels more like a journey of monetary extraction rather than patient-centered care. This is where Jacaranda Maternity comes into play. We began with a mission to reduce the level of neonatal and maternal mortality in East Africa. And over the last 13 years, we have developed a client-centric maternity journey that is sustainable and scalable as a business venture. Our chain of 3 maternity hospitals serves mainly peri-urban communities outside of Nairobi. And we see this as a key growth region, given the fact that there is a high rate of rural to urban migration. I know there's a lot of rural people still living out there in the communities, but it is very high. And these peri-urban communities actually turn into very, very large and densely populated settlements, driven through low cost of care, low cost of housing, as well as cheap public and private transport infrastructure. We seek to return the power back to the patient in a client-centric and client advocate-based approach. We use systems and data analysis to firmly close the loop on any client-related issues. If you have any questions about that, please talk to Kaylee Gold, our COO, who has been very instrumental in that. And because we specialize in maternity, I repeat that because we're not generalists, we focus on obstetric care. We have been able to optimize our operations and our go-to-market strategy in order to successfully drive more numbers through our hospitals and therefore deliver a cost of care as little as 25% of those in other private hospitals, which is quite something. So the market size is 1.4 million urban families a year who have some level of access to financing, be it through public or private means, who can actually pay for a half-decent maternity, something, because the market is crying out for a accessible, ready to scale, and very, very specialized. You can see that we break even very quickly. Our hospitals break even in about 14 months. We've been very lucky that we've had a range of DFIs, social impact investors, as well as VC funds who have invested in us so that we could get to the 3 hospitals. And we've been able to build them in as little as $500,000 CapEx, which is quite low for a fully fledged hospital. Like I said, so we break even in 14 months. And the beautiful thing is that because our services are bundled, we have been able to access healthcare financing for many communities out there in a manner that hasn't been seen before. We've grown a super brand in Nairobi and in Kenya, and we're backed with a very, very seasoned team of entrepreneurs as well as healthcare experts. There's quite a few of them, so I won't go into detail. You can see my ugly mug at the bottom. And we also have an experienced board as well as investors who have joined as observers. And I must note that these investors are keen to follow on in additional rounds of funding. So what do we want? We want $10 million. $10 million to scale to 15 hospitals across East Africa, serving the same peri-urban regions that I've spoken about in the past. And what we're looking for is somebody to share with that vision of both sustainability as well as scalability and impact to be able to help us to get to 25,000 safe annual deliveries by 2028. Thank you so much. Looking forward to your questions.
Thank you.
Was that 7 minutes?
Thank you so much. Anyone with a question to Audrey? Did I see right? Was she a part of the board members? Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kezia from Vested World. My question to you is, since maternity is a capped market, how else are you planning to scale your operations?
It's a capped market, but 1.4 million people delivering every year is pretty good enough for us in terms of market share. As we do scale, maternal and child health lends us to be able to move very easily into pediatrics, given that there's so many mothers who continue to care about their babies and want a good brand like Jacaranda to look after them. And something that Kaylee has already worked into, so we're doing that pretty well. But our bread and butter continues to be prenatal delivery and postpartum care. I see that as still being a good market for us to kind of keep our niche in. And there's plenty of case studies to be shown that if you focus on what you're good at, you get benefits multiplied over and over again. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, and especially for helping me recover on time. Ladies and gentlemen, our last entrepreneur, someone from Checkups.
Thank you so much. Wow, being the last act after such great pitches. I think first a round of applause to everyone who's already pitched. It's not easy being up here. I'm going to start off with some numbers. There are three things that will take women in Kenya, in East Africa, and across Africa to prison. The first is lack of school fees. The second is if they cannot put a roof over the heads of their children and the people that they care for. The third is healthcare bills. 72% of the women in Kenya today who are serving prison sentences are serving them for short-term, poverty-related, non-violent crimes. Selling outside the designated area, selling without a license, brewing illicit brew. And when we interrogated them, the reason was I had a child who needed medication, a parent who needed medication. I couldn't afford, I needed to take care of the landlord because he was ejecting us. I couldn't pay for school fees. How do I know this? I sit on the board of the only institution in East and Central Africa that is formed by formerly imprisoned women who are working to solve the problems that took them into prison. And they're not the only ones. Across the country, you've already seen the numbers. The continent even. The growing number of uninsured, uninsurable, underserved persons with chronic diseases or who just need to access health care is growing. Sunny, move to the third slide. We're going to make this under 7 minutes. Meet Alex, 64-year-old, male, father of 4, grandfather to 2. He's a husband to a small trader. In fact, one of the women who we serve on the organization that I've spoken to you about. She makes the most fantastic Swahili food in a market not too far in Nairobi. His diagnosis, hypertension, diabetes, early stage renal failure. He's never had a checkup. He's been on medication for 10 years. And he does the things that normal Kenyans do, East Africans, and pretty much the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. Whenever he has to buy medication, he pays out of pocket, full price, for everything, when he can afford it. Most of the time, he's negotiating which of these pills can I take, for how long, and then I'll come back with some money for the rest of it. He's waiting for his wife to make enough money at the kibanda for him to be able to buy more medication, or for his children to send money. He's then got to take a journey out to go and see the doctor. Again, it's a question of affordability. When he can afford, when he's got the time, knowing that that is a full day of sitting at the clinic, waiting on the bench until it's his turn to see a doctor. He is like 15 million Kenyans and growing. He is uninsurable. And nobody, so far, especially those who are in the insurance companies, want him on their list. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Renee Ngamao. I am a recovering corporate lawyer. My background is in oil and gas, mergers and acquisitions. And I know for those of you who have met me before, you know that my great passion in my recovery journey was looking at how do we change and impact the lives of women in this country and on this continent. What difference can we make, and how do we do so? And I'm not here alone. Allow me to introduce to you our CEO at Checkups.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Renee. I'm Moka Lantum. I'm the CEO and founder of Checkups. I have 25 years in health benefits management. That means I've been forcing about how people spend their healthcare dollar. And the story is pretty sad. But I'm also a proud Ashoka Fellow for the last 11 years. And I am equally obsessed about supply chain in healthcare. And what can we do to get medicines down the last mile faster or better than the Coca-Cola? Because the Coca-Cola right now is winning the race.
So how do we solve the problem? Well, it boils down to 3 things which you've already heard. Affordability is number 1. Access is number 2. And adherence. They've got to stop taking the medicine until you feel better, and then 3 weeks later or 3 months later, the problem recurs. So here's what we've come up with. An end-to-end solution, cover. We are a fintech, health tech, service delivery platform. We're tailor-made for the hundreds of millions of Alexes and their wives and their children, the uninsurable on the continent. We've tested and tried ourselves not only in the most remote parts of Kenya, but also in South Sudan. And what do? Cover enables our clients to unlock 4x their payment in a way that they can afford. And by that I mean daily, weekly, monthly, or lump sum. It enables them to interact with us in all the languages that they feel comfortable in, from Dinka to Somali to Swahili and everything in between. We create thousands of jobs for our youth on our platform, particularly youth who are in the healthcare service delivery. We can geolocate our clients as they move, which means that they don't have to come to us, we go to them. And that deals with the question of those who are migrants, nomads. We dispatch our medics and our medicine, and we follow up to ensure adherence with treatment. The result? Faster recovery, huge savings, better health care. So what's the opportunity?
What you've heard is a very simple pathway where you just simply load money into a platform, unlock your benefits, and enjoy healthcare. So far, we have over 10,000 members subscribed within the first year, which is remarkable, thanks to direct-to-consumer customer acquisition. And for the VCs in the room, the numbers are pretty good. We spend about $25 on customer acquisition with a lifetime value of $750. I think that's quite bankable. Our growth strategy is anchored around creating unusual partnerships in the industry. Right now, we're talking to 2 banks in South Sudan and 2 banks in Kenya who see the opportunity to plug in the platform to convert deposits into health benefits, thereby converting the thousands of clients into insured lives so their workflow or their cash flow is not disrupted. And for governments that want to take the bold step of creating access to healthcare without having to go through the arduous process of creating a social insurance fund, this is a solution. And we have a few governments that are looking at a platform as a license opportunity. For corporates that still believe that the healthcare of their employees is an important part of the benefits they bring to the employees, they could use a platform to create unusual pooling between employees, fund that pool, and have their employees have healthcare at 4x lower cost than the regular market. So we invite you to join us to unlock cover for the 15 million Kenyans and definitely the millions of Africans that to this day haven't had the opportunity to have their healthcare costs covered. Thank you very much, and we look forward to have a conversation with you after this.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. One question, only one. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much to the duo. I don't think I've understood how it works. So I save 10 shillings and that translates to 40 shillings worth of benefits? How does that work? Sorry.
Just exactly that.
You cracked it in one.
You cracked it in one.
So we can talk about the mechanics. I'm just really aware of the time, which is why I cut out so much stuff. And I'm certainly hoping that we'll be able to engage with a lot of you, but it's exactly that. You unlock, for your 1 shilling, you get 4 shillings worth of benefits as a client, in consultation, labs, diagnostics, and discounted pharmacies.
I am looking forward to this follow-on conversation.
You certainly do.
Just in time, just in time. Thank you so much. Thank you, I really appreciate you. And thank you, everyone in the room. I'm excited to see the follow-on conversation that are going to come. We will share pitch decks in the room, but most importantly, we'll guide you to our DealShare platform where you're able to look into these deals in detail. Let me hand over back to my colleague, Nazri, and thank you so much for being patient with me.
Thank you so much to all the pitches that we've had the pleasure of listening to this afternoon, this evening. It really does show that there's such a wealth out there, you know? There's people looking at the same problem and trying to solve it in such unique and interesting ways. So as Stefazwa says, we are going to be bringing in these pitches to you on email, so you'll be able to interact with the information a bit better after this. And we will also be there as AVPA. If you have any questions and queries, please feel free to reach out to us. We are here in Nairobi and we'd be very interested to talking to all of you. And just the last plug, if you will, we are having our first AVPA Global Conference. It's going to be in November, from the 4th to the 6th of November. And that is going to be the premier social investing conference on the continent, and we're really excited to be having it in Kenya. The more information will be shared with you as the days go along. We will also be having a couple of more DealShare live events, maybe focused on other areas, education, agriculture, and climate. So look out for those invites. They'll be coming through. And we look forward to, as AVPA, also doing better as the events go along. So please give us your feedback, the things that you loved, the things that you think we could do a little better on. We would love to get your feedback. So before we finish, I want to just welcome you to our cocktail mixer. Our pitching organizations have already set up for you, so feel free to also go find out more information about what they're doing, ask the direct questions. We're going to be downstairs in the atrium. There's going to be some food, so please stay and eat, because we don't want to waste food. And there'll be some drinks for those who partake, and for those who don't, there'll be some options as well. So please, let's continue the conversations. I know this was like a lot for one afternoon, but certainly I think there's a great opportunity there. Let's maximize as much as possible. So my last job really is to say thank you very much. Thank you for coming. We want to see you again. We want to talk to you again. In terms of exit, it's just to request you to exit through that door on that side, if that's possible. And the atrium is... you'll be using the stairs to access it. So there'll be some ladies giving you some directions out there. So thank you very much. Asanteni sana.